Welcome back to the Opposition Podcast. And firstly, I'd like to welcome you to... We've got to welcome the traditional owners tonight. No?
I thought you were about to do a welcome to country.
I was about to do
exactly
a welcome to country. No, but a couple of the comments that you guys made during that beautiful countdown that doesn't annoy anybody, that one should have an ad, don't give me any ideas. Two, we were discussing... just as the end of the countdown came down, that ended, Rukshan was talking about how we should have something funky to open the show.
Like a stinger with the logo.
I have one on my mini report. You just,
yeah.
That was meant to be your one job. But welcome everybody tonight. Next week, Rukshan promises to have the stinger for us. And I think we're also going to have scrolling comments. So everybody's comments will... a bit like my live streams that I do on YouTube, where all the comments will be featured, and just we'll just read out the super chats.
Chats, yeah.
How you doing, Rukshan?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Improving. Still doing some rehab on my foot, so it's a work in progress. I got to tell you, Avi, it's very difficult not having the ability to walk around properly.
It must be so hard messaging your wife to bring you dinner.
makes everything hard. But look, other than that, it's another week coming to the end of another week, and as always, there's something interesting to talk about. So I think we should just get straight into it.
There is a lot going on. Just for those of you that are new, make sure to hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you get our updates when we come live. There's 1,400 right now on live. So guys, thank you so much for joining us, and make sure to share the live stream. It's you guys that help us grow our Opposition Podcast. Keep the comments coming through. Of course, any super chats on both mine and Rukshan's YouTube pages, we will read every single one of them. And I saw one of our best super chatters, Abby King, said, I'll put it up again just to make Rukshan feel better. I've realised I should rotate between you and Avi for super chats.
Abby's got the right idea. Abby, that's the equitable.
I've realised I should
way of doing things, because if you don't do
Abby
that,
must be commenting on yours.
She's got to hit the diversity quota. So do it between both. Abby, that's the modern.
I thought it was the other way around. I thought Abby was. I thought I was losing a super chatter, and now I'm gaining. Abby, 100%.
I'm happy for you to gain it, man. As long as your commenters also, do the same for me, and comment super chat on my one.
Okay, so let's get straight into the show. We have a good guest. Let's start with a bit of the background story, and who tells it better than my good friend, Paul Dowsley.
It's the council crippled by infighting.
It's democracy versus bureaucracy.
Its mayor of just 4 months, Aidan McLindon, banned from going to work at Whittlesea Council or attend meetings in person, and forbidden from talking to colleagues.
My card has been deactivated, that I'm not allowed to enter the precinct, not to talk to staff, access a PA. I don't have any way to communicate to anybody other than through the work email.
Letters from CEO Craig Lloyd to the mayor allege aggressive, inappropriate, intimidating and threatening behaviour towards council workers.
Not only do I deny them, I just think it's quite bizarre that they can clutch at straws like this and assassinate someone's character.
It's a new mess for the council, which has only just ended 4 years being run by administrators.
To me, it's a bit of insanity. It looks just wrong. It doesn't make sense, and it doesn't comply with the law.
All those in favour, please raise your hand.
Councillors unanimously passed a no confidence motion and called for his immediate resignation. The City of Whittlesea's CEO, Deputy Mayor and other councillors won't tell its ratepayers about any of the dramas because they say it relates to confidential correspondence. It's all likely to come to a head at the next council meeting on Tuesday.
I am the People's Mayor. I'm not going anywhere.
Paul Dowsley, 7 News.
Got to say, welcome to the show, Aidan. Thanks for joining us tonight.
No worries. Thanks, Avi. Thanks, Rukshan.
Now, there's actually a lot to unpack there, and we'll love to hear an update where you stand and what's going on. But two things I want to note straight off the bat is A lot of Australian flags in your footage there from the council. That's a bit more of our discussion after we unpack everything going on with you and break it down. And then the other thing is the no confidence. Again, another no confidence in Australia today. One we're going to unpack. But before we get to both of them, you, Mr. Proud Australia, is it true, the allegations? What were they exactly, and where are we?
That is a very good question, Avi. I think that what's happened is that we've entered a paradigm, particularly in Victorian politics, where you don't really have an opportunity to enter any form of even timid or robust debate if you have a different view to the narrative of the bureaucracy or the leadership at the helm. I think what we've seen is an incrementation of democracy eroded, and bureaucracy particularly over the last 10 years, has really tweaked things in legislation where they are actually in control, and instead of your local, state, and federal MPs, where they're predominantly being paid to make very serious decisions, they're actually paid to be glorified socialites. And I would go so far as to say that the role of a councillor has been diluted to being a compliant advocate on issues that the council that you're a part of are in agreement with. And I think that's a terrible tragedy that democracy rapidly evaporated in such a short amount of time. What we're seeing now is what they'll call a psychological damage to staff, of which none of that's known to me, who that was, how it was, why it even was. Unfortunately, I've had no natural justice. There was procedural motions to guillotine debate in allegations that were levelled at me. So unfortunately, throughout this whole time, no form of mediation has ever taken place. And I have to be careful what I say, and I do say that I don't make none of these statements in any way, shape or form in the position of mayor or a councillor of Whittlesea City. This is me as a private citizen observing what has happened to have such a toxic culture where a majority can be quickly coerced to such a degree that a mayor with a majority supported can very rapidly all of a sudden turn against it, depending on the ideological issues that have been played out in the public arena. So currently it's in limbo. There's a commission of inquiry that started last week for the council. The two monitors have been stood aside that were designated to Whittlesea, because previously the last 4 years they've been in administration, and during that time they've had the CEO, which has continued into his 5th year of the contract. And I think what we're seeing here right across the board in Victoria is that you have, to a large degree, 79 CEOs that are effectively become mini premiers. So plus or minus $500,000 wages, you're talking about 79 little kingdoms broken up into the state of Victoria. So whilst you get that rope in Parliament, in the Spring Street Theatre, where they've got parliamentary privilege, really we've got to start putting a microscope on the 79 councils, because all politics is local. And to me, if you can stitch up politically and politicise local government from the grassroots up, that's where the real battle is. And then you've got the slower turning cogs in state and federal, but they are all built on the foundation on the politicisation of local government.
I think many Australians and Victorians would have become more knowledgeable about in terms of how much influence councils kind of have in their day-to-day lives, or how much they actually want to have when they get involved in international affairs and all these kind of things. But this aspect of these CEOs and these kind of power structures behind councils, I don't think that's something that people actually know too much about. I remember first finding out about it, a few years ago, and it was quite interesting to me that there's a CEO of each council, like the City of Melbourne, and usually they get paid more than the mayor, and they want to have influence, and there's other competing interests and people influencing them. Is that kind of what we're seeing? Is that what you're referring to when you talk about the little fiefdoms of 79 CEOs that are kind of calling the shots, or they want to in some instances?
Yeah, broadly, I think you've got a majority of the councils that are heavily politicised. And in the CEO's defence, they're playing by the rules and the parameters that they've been given, which are fairly broad. And then I've had the opportunity of being a councillor in Queensland as well as Victoria. So in terms of a comparative analysis, you can certainly see that Victoria, while they give their $38,000 to councillors, they obviously have to maintain full-time jobs where possible. So they've actually got very limited time to actually represent the community, read through documents, go through line items by line items, ask where the money's going, and look at ways of cost saving, of increasing revenue through innovative policy. They have to largely be reactive. So you've got this paradigm that's been created, and this was under the Local Government Act of 2020, under the Andrews government, where they actually strengthen the legislation where it heavily lies in favour of the bureaucracy, even though it explicitly says that the CEO's, one of its key roles of a CEO is to support the role of the mayor. Now, what we've seen is in legislation, it hasn't been tested to the degree that's happened now. We're in uncharted territory now that I've been stood down. I only probably knew a dozen staff at best in the closed quarters that we're allowed to, because we're not allowed in 90% of the building of any of the sites. We can't even go to a cafeteria to get a sandwich. It's all off limits, and it's different for every council depending on the internal politics that are played out. But what I certainly saw was that we weren't empowered to be representatives. We're being told you can't be just talked to and say, this is the report, here's the budget, rubber stamp it. That's not accountable, that's not transparent. And I think in defence of the CEO, coming out of administration for 4 years, there really should have been something in place to say that there's a 3-month transition period where there's a clean slate, new CEO comes in, because obviously, naturally, there's going to be an inclination that that's their little kingdom, and you can't keep operating like that. Now, I think the local government 2020 needs an urgent review, and we've actually got to get representatives who can speak freely without walking on eggshells and worried about where they're going to get knives from next, because there's such broad things about bullying and intimidation and aggression, when really you either have a different point of view or you've asked certain questions that have not been acceptable by the people you're asking them to. So it's flawed legislation. That pack hunt think, and that type of group think, because self-interest, of course, drives their preservation.
I think a lot of people will be surprised. I am certainly surprised that the mayor doesn't actually hold the power. You would think that that's the top position of power in local government, but it doesn't seem to be.
No, largely, look, especially if you've got very close numbers, and I'm a big believer of not having party politics in local government. I'm not saying you can have freedom of association to a political party, absolutely, but the political party needs to park it at the door, especially when they go into the chambers and make decisions for the community. Now, unfortunately, the Labor Party constitution, they have in there that they have to seek guidance from caucus on issues that they vote for in council. So once you've got that politicisation, they're actually putting the party before the community. So endorsed Labor Party are heavily compromised from the outset. But what we're seeing now, I think, is that the politicisation and the bastardisation that happens now internally would never be acceptable in any other workplace. So unfortunately, the allegations that have been levelled at me was exactly what I suffered. The segregation, the belittling, the humiliation. Yet I just had to keep getting back up there and making sure that my freedom of speech and my input wasn't compromised. And I was courteous, and I wouldn't even say I ever got to a point where I was robust. Maybe at the rates, the rates, that was one of my passionate platforms. But of course, that threatens the business model of that income that comes in every year. So if you haven't got a prudent organisation, or one example is in the 4 years of administration, the city of Whittlesea had 48 organisation committees that were actually formed and being funded for by the ratepayer. I have simply asked for the list of those 48 organisations and committees and how much ratepayers' money has gone to those. I haven't got an answer. Now, if I can't get an answer as mayor, as you say, Harvey, it's largely a figurehead position, and you're constantly trying to herd cats, where it's actually a lot easier. There are some good mayors across Victoria, don't get me wrong, but for the general part, it's easier, to wear your chains, sit in the referee's chair, and it's a yes sir, no sir process, which has already sort of been it's already been rehearsed. So to me, it's not genuine democracy as it should be.
And to me, at least, this whole idea about hurt feelings and stuff, I don't know the full context, but councils, people would associate them with, rates, rubbish, and all these kind of things. But like I said before, they've become involved in a lot of social issues and, very divisive issues as well. And they've, often they drive some of the divisive arguments that we have within our societies, like over national holidays, things like this. Councils want to get their 2 cents in, and it's very divisive sometimes. So I think it does become a place where you do have heated and robust debate sometimes, and that's just the nature of it. I think the people.
Isn't that what democracy is supposed to be about?
Yeah. So I think this whole fine line around hurt feelings and this and that again. Probably weakens the whole concept of what people are meant to be doing in that space, especially if councils want to go down this path, which they have been doing over a number of years in Australia, where they have gotten involved in social issues. So, I mean, do you have anything to add to that, Aidan? Is that kind of do you find yourself as the mayor, as a councillor, that you often have to speak about things and defend things that potentially are not really a relevant space for the council, but it's become that way?
Very much so. I think what's happened is you've got the centralised power in Spring Street, and because local governments only exist as a to statute law, to state law, they're beholden to state. And we've seen recently with the fire tax levy, we as councillors have to then become the bad guys and collect these taxes on behalf of the state government. So really, we're just an extended state government. We're not local government with robust, thriving democracy anymore. And I think that's where things have markedly gone wrong with the Local Government Act of 2020. They only want people who will be very, very compliant to certain issues that will be advocated by some. And in the case of the city of Whittlesea, huge multi-faith, multicultural city of 230,000 people. Now, some of the things that get pushed through council, you can guarantee that 90% or more would disagree with it. So it's definitely not representative. Yet the bureaucrats and the leadership teams are subjective to state government orders. So if a state wants to get an agenda through, it's very, very easy for them to press the button, send the email out to 79 CEOs, etc. And therein lies the problem. They can overnight change and implement some economic and social issues really should have nothing to do with local. And unfortunately, representation is sidelined in that process.
Yeah, I think one of the comments that it says you're the mayor voted in for by the people, and to see that happening, I think for a lot of people doesn't kind of make sense. But
it doesn't make sense unless there's something really
well, yeah, of course,
illegal or corrupt. We saw corruption in the Casey Council, and even that took a lot longer than you to shut down. But I guess, some people are asking, fine, it's true. We can see a lot of the woke stuff the council's doing, but there's nothing you can think of that they're pointing to, or there's nothing they've pointed to and showed you that you don't agree was bullying, but they're alleged. Like, have you seen the allegations?
There was some 15 allegations put towards me, so broad and ridiculous. Like, one of them was that I referred to Indigenous as brothers and sisters on a Sky News interview as a candidate for a state election in the by-election of Werribee. It wasn't even as mayor.
You're saying that that's one of the allegations of bullying as to why they pulled you off as mayor.
That's correct. And I'm thinking, I said, I don't have to apologise for referring to, my Indigenous brothers and sisters. I was born in Darwin. I've always referred to them as brothers and sisters. That's how I was raised. And, the responses are something like, he shows no remorse. What am I showing remorse for? Being me, being the way I grew up. And I think when you start getting suffocated and having to watch every single word that you say, and that was despite me standing aside as mayor for a period of 3 weeks when council was in recess. And that's largely, of course, where the Labor Party mobilised their witch hunt against me, which, they unfortunately, the minute I got in there, they were working against me as a candidate in the city. There were 57 candidates across the city. I received 55% of the primary vote. There were 7 key policies in that, in my policy platform, of which 2, heavily triggered, obviously, the bureaucracy and the Labor Party machine, and that was that I wanted to freeze rates going through a cost of living crisis, and I think that's actually very doable. And secondly, I wanted child-friendly public spaces. Now, to me, that's not controversial. As a father, I mean, who doesn't want child-friendly spaces? And why is all of a sudden that controversial? And as a teacher and as an educator, I see it on the front line. These poor kids are getting so many agendas shoved down their throat. And then the very people that they say they're protecting and supporting, they're actually exploiting. So it's actually counterproductive to the people they so-called, are representing, and it's counterproductive to the poor kids whose minds are still being, still developing and being rewired. And to me, I'm thinking, what the heck has that got to do with local government? And I should be able to speak.
I dare say if what you're telling us is true, and that's the real reason they targeted you, I am fairly confident to say that most Victorians would agree with your policy positions. Most Victorians want the council to focus on roads, rates, and rubbish. Anything to do with council events, like only council stuff. Like, they're sick of the woke, the push for wokeness in councils. They're sick of being told how to feel about international affairs or about Australia Day, or to have some sort of white guilt about our history. People are sick of that. So if that is the real reason, like, is that out of the 15 allegations that you saw, what from their position would be considered the most severe act of bullying or whatever it was? The most severe allegation, what was it? Surely it's not calling brothers and sisters.
One, which was in a full council meeting, which is all online and been recorded, they wanted a Rainbow Advisory Committee. Now, that just landed on the agenda without any pre-discussion amongst councillors. I simply asked the director that where did the push for this Rainbow Advisory Committee come from, given we're going through a cost of living crisis? And I was very polite, and I said, look, I understand, and it's great to see that you're passionate about that issue. Where did it come from? And it was from a petition in May, when it was under administration, of 12. Now, my response to her was, what, 12? That's all I said. It's all online. And yet that was another allegation of workplace health and safety, an OHS report. And I'm thinking, that's my role as mayor to question, where is money going? So it gets to the point, and obviously some of that was going through an arbitration process. 3 allegations went to a councillor. That was dismissed within 2 or 3 weeks, totally dismissed. The arbitration process then, obviously I can't divulge the machinations through that process, but that was blindsided 14 days before the arbiter bring down a report. 2 monitors had then written to the minister, asked with their recommendation to stand me down. Now, the monitors were supposed to guide and support the role of all the councillors. There was no intervention. There was no attempt for any mediation. Ultimately, it came down to a different point of view of an ideological difference. It's as simple as that. And often people might understand me. I've worked with people with gender dysphoria. I've seen it all. And the parents, mostly, I oversaw 80 schools in the southern region.
Because you were a teacher.
Yeah, I was an education officer. So during COVID, I had to oversee 80 schools in primary and secondary schools. And the parents where the children were going through gender dysphoria said, please, can you stop? Can somehow the government stop pushing all this stuff down them? It's hard enough for us to struggle. You're putting a spotlight on my child. So to me, I always come from the view that it's actually counterproductive for the people that they say they're encouraging. It's similar with Indigenous issues, and that struck a nerve with them. I'm saying, well, I'm sorry, but I got pulled up for saying, traditional custodians in the opening of council instead of owners. Well, ownership and the whole notion of ownership was the Western owners. They didn't own the land; they lived on the land. So some of these people who are trying to roll out these agendas have no appreciation for the concept of ownership. And if you go to Indigenous, any of the tribes, they'll say, we don't own the land, we lived on the land, and they often moved through and lived off the land. The whole sense of ownership was when they caught it out and put fences around things to the convicts and gave them a plot of land once they'd served their time. So really, once you start scratching behind the surface, these people, our Indigenous, people with different sexual orientations, they are being absolutely exploited by government to divide the people and distract them from the real issues. And meanwhile, they've got a gun over the table, and they're completely pillaging and finding any single way they can squeeze more money out of people through infringement notices and rates going up. And I went on and do the basics brilliantly. We just want clean.
He froze on us, did he?
He frozen us. I think.
Isn't it ironic? He said, "Do the basics brilliantly."
We
and
want
then
short grass.
Oh,
there
there
he
you
is.
go.
He's back.
He's
My
back.
back.
Is he frozen again?
I
We
think
want to
I
make
hacked his
sure.
system.
I don't know if his reception is pretty poor there because he does cut out a fair bit. Maybe
That's
try call back in.
that was insane. So I think from what I read of what I heard from that, so as the mayor, he wanted to know about this rainbow coalition thing that they wanted to set up, or advisory board, and he wanted to see how it came about, and it was apparently from a petition made by 12 people, and he asked questions about that.
Do you know what? And even if he was blunt about it,
well, forget if he's blunt, but can
it doesn't
really 12
matter.
people? I've seen petitions where more people ask the council to do something and they don't do anything,
And they don't get it.
So,
Yeah, of course.
I mean,
that is a good
this is the
point.
thing.
But they're like, but you know, it's the kind of subject that they just need one person to say it, and then you're not allowed to talk back. So I'm not even complaining that it's 12 people. Fine, it's 12 really passionate activists. Cool, but the whole point of politics and especially at that grassroots level in local government should be to flesh out these issues. And if you can't debate it at local level, imagine how bad it gets when you go up, when you go higher. And
well, I mean, we went to that in it was I can't remember what the council was, the Monash City Council, where they had the whole. I think you were there, right? The trans. I can't remember the exact issue. You were there, where the trans rights activists came, and some
at
of
the
the families
council,
were there.
yeah,
At the council,
in Clayton or whatever.
Clayton, yeah, I think it was Monash City, one of those ones.
Monash City, yeah, I think that's I think that was Clayton.
Yeah,
but whatever,
and that was really the first time that I've ever gone to like a council meeting to see what goes down there.
That video for fun? That was a fun.
Pull up the video for fun, but that was bizarre. But you saw just how invested some of these councillors are in these type of social woke, agenda type issues.
Back on.
And that permeates throughout all the kind of ways that they want to see the society and the world as well. So even in this instance, where they don't want this just any kind of ulterior view to what they're prescribing that we should live by, if you question that whatsoever, then you've broken some rule that doesn't even really exist. I feel like that's kind of what's happened here, because how else does it get to a point where...
somebody does bring up a good point, and I guess you're the best person that can answer this, but he was barred from the council unanimously, so it can't just be because he's anti-woke. What would you answer to that? Because it does seem kind of unlikely that everybody would be against this, because I know many councillors across the country. And it seems like in every council, even if it's a woke council, there's always one or two rational people there trying to push back. So how is it that the entire council voted you out? And on the opposing side of that argument, I would say that if there was something super serious, they would have given it to Paul Dowsley and the rest of the media, because they would love to delegitimize you. So. But how does it come to a point that everybody voted you out?
Yep. Is that audio okay?
Yeah, that's better.
Yep.
I don't know, whatever you've
No
done.
worries. So what it was, the unanimous vote was actually followed a petition. In that petition, there was some 1,400 signatures calling for me to resign, and that was after the Werribee by-election. Now, that petition was obviously politically motivated. Over 70% of the people that signed it were not even from Whittlesea. They were from Melbourne and Sydney, and who knows what Labor Party branches that had been distributed to over a fairly long period of time. Now, in that 3 weeks when council was not sitting, I then returned from the Werribee by-election, and of course, in that time, you're talking about a whole group of new councillors who have never been elected, don't understand politics, who have largely been gaslit. So once you get that group think in a very toxic culture. And I hold no malice towards them, because it's very daunting when you get in there and you get read the Riot Act about what you can and can't say, to the point you go home and thinking, hang on, if I say anything, potentially I could be in trouble. So picture a teacher that says to the 10 students, whatever you do, don't sit next to Johnny, don't sit next to Johnny, don't sit next to Johnny. They've been read the Riot Act. Johnny comes in from doing his lap around the oval, and then Johnny comes back in and the 10 don't want to sit next to him. So it's very, very easy. Adults are just big kids. The peer pressure is huge, especially in local government, far greater than state, which I've been an MP for, and federal, because you're in a much bigger, broader environment. There's a lot of banter, there's parliamentary privilege, you can have digs, you can withdraw. But here, it's very raw, it's very personal. So when you're given your 750 silver coins every week, then self-preservation becomes your motivation more so than representation of the community or representing the truth. Now, you have to understand that in that it wasn't the unanimous vote to block me out of the council. That was single-handedly done by the CEO to all of a sudden say that I was a workplace health and safety threat. Now, to me, I'm thinking, hang on, I have not had any altercations with anybody. I haven't had any arguments. There hasn't even been robust debate. Where's the police reports? I mean, did I pull a machete out? Did I pull a knife out? Did I pull a gun out?
Mate, you couldn't have pulled out a machete because you'd be...
Not anymore.
Nobody would have lifted an eyebrow if you pulled a machete in Victoria. That's fine.
It probably would have been the norm back then. The problem is this. You can't say that, once you get that group think, it's very easy, and especially in the early days when you're still trying to gather. It's an orientation week at university. It's never ending. Now here, I'll tell you, here's the key why you can get 10 people against you. We did not spend 1 minute in a room as councillors to discuss what our vision was for the city and who we were. A bit of a meet and greet, bit of a catch up. Never ever without bureaucracy present. And that is telling, and that is damaging, because there was no relationships built, there's no open communication, and what bureaucracy wants is to make sure that people are operating in the dark and in isolation, and when they do come together, they've been trained to jump to the tune. So to me, being in politics for 30 years, it's very easy how they can, line them up like penguins and say, this is what's happening, this is what's happening. And of course, in the flurry of all, everyone's sitting there panicked, like, oh, he said some bad stuff. He wants to get rid of rainbow flags in childcares and kindergartens. And if I support him, I'll look like I'm a homophobe. So it's very, very easy to put 10 hands up to say, no confidence, no confidence. Deep down, do they believe it? No. I can guarantee you that a lot of those councillors are extremely uncomfortable being put in that position in the first place after they endorsed me to go there. Anything that I would have done surely would have been out in the public arena by now. It will at some stage anyway, and hopefully that will come to light. But you'll find that having a different point of view in an extremely woke council that was simply representing multi-faiths and multi-cultures can land you in hot water. And very few people put their head above the parapet, as I said, because they want to make sure that they don't offend anybody. And now, how do you not offend anybody? Well, you don't say anything. You don't stand for anything. You don't put an alternative forward, and you certainly don't support a mayor who's come out.
So we were talking about this while you were calling back in. It's the idea that you can't push back on any issue makes no sense, especially like if you can't do it at such a low level of government, like local grassroots level of government. Imagine how much worse it would be as you go up the chain. That is literally the place to debate ideas on behalf of the people who voted you in. And if you're the mayor, so if everything you're telling us is true, that is absolute insanity. And it must be reversed. Now, before I ask you what you're doing and we move on to other stories, I just want Rukshan read this super chat. Thank you for the super chat.
Cassandra, thanks for the super chat. Aidan, I shared your statement to the Shepparton Libertarian
Facebook branch.
Libertarian Facebook branch.
This is a problem when you get a Sri Lankan trying to read English.
Mate, there's a lot of spelling errors there, Cassandra. But
I'm taking Cassandra's side.
That's racist, mate. That's an allegation right there.
Is it? I'd be locked out as mayor if I said that at a council meeting.
So it seems like you've got some support from Cassandra. Thank you so much for that. And Steenley, thank you for the super chat as well. Thank you, guys. Like I said, we'll read every single super chat, and to the 3,455 people online with us right now, thank you so much for joining us. And make sure to hit share, like. If you're not subscribed to the channel and you haven't hit the notification bell, do that now while you're watching, because we are growing nicely, and it's because of you guys. Now, I know, Rukshan, you said you wanted to watch that video. I think let's end the show at the end. We'll watch that. It's like I looked at it.
Yeah, I was just making the point that
we'll watch it at the end. It's all relevant to this, and
it's all relevant. Yeah,
I forgot how funny it was that night.
It was funny.
When we were talking about the woke councils, we while we're waiting for you to call back in, were you there that night, Rukshan?
I was there. Yes, I was
Yeah,
there.
we were
I was live streaming.
remembering the protest for the drag story time in Monash Council and how Antifa rocked up there. It was a funny night, but we'll end the show. We'll just watch it at the end for fun. So before we move on to the next story, what are you doing now? And is there a chance you're getting back in? Like, are you going to be mayor again, or is that really not going to happen as much as we want to see that happen?
Well, as I said, it's uncharted territory, and obviously I can't divulge too much other than that I will be lodging for a judicial review into the local government minister's decision with the Supreme Court. This is uncharted territory. I mean, this is an interpretation of Section 229 of the Local Government Act of 2020 that hasn't been tested before. And I think it weighs upon me that I must continue going down this pathway because if I don't, then what it does, it validates that what they have done is right to an elected representative. They are potentially using me to hang me out to dry to shut any other mayor or any other councillor that's going to have similar dissent, and then use me as an example. Now, they've pinned me up against the wall, and they probably would have hoped that I've walked away by now. But I have a strong sense of justice, and I'll continue the fight to make sure that if I'm going to raise some issues, just as a father in a local government council, like anybody should be able to get into the situation that I'm in now. Then the community deserves answers, and they don't have them right now. Everything's done in cloak and dagger. I haven't had any recourse whatsoever. As I said, no mediation. Procedural motions were guillotined on me. Fabricated and fraudulent petitions were put to council to the point where the 1,400 signatures says that we the residents of Whittlesea, we the signed residents. Now that's not true. It was a change.org petition. That was changed the last minute, which completely invalidates a petition that was politically driven and should have been absolutely blocked through the governance rules. But unfortunately, when you've got a politically driven bureaucracy, they think this is fantastic. This is an opportune time to stitch him up. So I think what we've got to do is rapidly review the Local Government Act. And I did call for a Royal Commission into local government because in that 5 months, the amount of councillors and mayors that called me across Victoria, sort of venting the same grievances, saying this is exactly how it happens here. We all walk in, they read it to us, everyone jumps to the tune. How are we supposed to make any change? So whilst it sounds absolutely absurd that you can get 10 councillors moving a vote of no confidence, when you look at the coercion that takes place, the gaslighting that takes place, an extremely toxic culture, it's very, very simple. And they've got that down so much that people probably won't champion some of the causes I've championed because they know exactly what's going to happen. So they don't even go there in the first place. And I think that's what's unique in this situation, where I've had the courage just to say it as it is. We should be living in a Western democracy where I can say that. But look what happens. I get segregated and it looks like 10 against... I remember the book that I read in English, 12 Angry Men. I don't know if you guys are aware of that one.
Yeah.
And there was just one person on the jury. You only need that one person on the jury to say, hang on, something's not what it seems. And that's the situation that I'm in. That I've been embarrassed and humiliated in the process, of course, financially guillotined straight away without notice, and you set up, you've got to feed a family. How can you do this in any workplace after the amount of effort you've put in to represent the community? It's beyond me. And I do think that the first step is a massive review into the Local Government Act of 2020. Because that was designed exactly what they're doing now. Looks like I'm first cab off the rank. But more so, I would call for a Royal Commission into where are the procurements going. Look at the conflicts of interest riddled throughout state and local government. It's disastrous. And I think when you start scratching behind the surface, they've probably got a heck of a lot more to hide, which is why they're so keen on pushing me off the boat.
So one of the super chatters actually is commenting, and I don't know if it's genuine or not, but they're saying they're the ones that wrote the petition. Aidan, my petition was not political. I wanted better from my mayor. I am not related to any political party. 1,200 plus people wanted better. Not even once have you asked to talk to me as a consultant. Do you know who that is?
Look, I'll take it on face value that they're saying the truth. The reality is you go through the postcodes, they're all from Melbourne and interstate. So even that statement itself is not true. 1,200 people wanted better. What, a better New South Wales government? A better Melbourne City Council? That's not the truth. It's all tabled.
Do you know who set up that petition?
The name escapes me, but it was someone involved in one of the transport unions, to my knowledge, the bus union or something like that. So they're obviously 1 degree separated, and naturally the Labor Party, they keep their fingerprints pretty tidy. They're 1 degree separated from the mayhem, and that's how it works. But I've been, even as a candidate, I was completely trolled by local organisations, and I've scrapped behind the service. The Labor Party members, and you've only got to type in the federal member, Andrew Giles, in his thank you speech, and he literally names all the trolls that have been having a go at anybody with a different train of thought. Because you have to remember, Northside, we're in Whittlesea, we're in Labor heartland. So you've got 5 state Labor MPs, 2 federal Labor MPs, a massively active Labor branch, and only 4 years ago, 9 out of the 11 were Labor councillors. So you sort of seismic shift where I've come out from the outside, and of course, what are they going to do? They can't have any form of dissent. So I've got the trolls against me, the state MPs against me, the federal members against me, and of course the bureaucracy. So, I mean, I had the odds are stacked up against me hugely. So you can see why a paradigm would quickly shift where all of a sudden everyone quickly freaks out and says, oh, we've got to get rid of him. You know, he said things that we shouldn't be able to say. So it's to me, it's pretty simple.
This idea that you brought up before about this, conformity kind of being the norm that's kind of expected within councils. It goes to that broader point, I think, of more people now having to be engaged in the local council process and, having to put their hand up and do politics there as well. I think in New South Wales, we saw the Libertarians, they've had a bit of luck getting involved in local council politics. Is that a way to kind of change some of this dynamic as well? I know you said a royal commission and a review into all these kind of things, but at a grassroots level, if more people got involved in councils that had these kind of different political ideas and kind of balanced it out a little bit and, change the dynamic, kind of like maybe what you're trying to do, being outspoken about.
Look, absolutely. If I had to, and I wouldn't have said this a few years ago, if I had to look at the most important level of government, I will tell you now it's local government. Because if you look at the structure of a pyramid, the foundation of that pyramid, is local councils. You've got 79 councils, 79 mini premiers, almost on a premier's wage, running the show and looking at every local bylaw development. There's some very big decisions are made at a local level. We've seen it with Reform Party in the UK. There's a resurgence of people getting involved in local politics. All politics is local. So whilst you can have the wars in Russia, Ukraine, the old man driving out of his driveway and hitting a pothole, that's what annoys him every single day. The news, that's fine. It's a form of infotainment for them over time. But, when their grass gets long, or they get an infringement notice that's unfair at an ATM where they've stopped for 2 minutes at midnight and got a ticket, without parking properly, these sorts of things, all politics is local. And for me, as I said, I always have to premise this by saying I love everybody, regardless of their sexuality. It's just stupid that you've got to do all these clauses and addendums. The trans flag, and I've seen what they're doing to the trans kids and exploiting them, and the queues that they have at the Royal Children's Hospital about some of this, stuff that's been rewiring people's kids' minds. I'm talking kids here. Why have we got a trans flag in 79 councils? Now, if we had it in 10 councils out of 79, I'd be concerned. If we had it in 50, I'm thinking, man, we've lost the battle. Let's take a look at it. We've got it in 79 councils. Now, you tell me what mayor is going to have the courage to say, this isn't a local government issue. Stop exploiting those people with a different sexuality. Get rid of it, and let's get back to basics. Now, that's a common sense thing that 90% of people think. But how many are actually saying it? Close to zero. Because look what happened.
So do you know, what was the petition exactly? What were they saying? What were they calling for in the petition?
A vote of no confidence in the mayor. Because of he was running for Werribee, so they used the Werribee by-election.
Yeah, okay. So what was the petition with 12 people?
Oh, sorry, that was.
That was
the instigation of a rainbow.
That was the instigation of the rainbow thing. The one for no confidence of you was started by a petition of 1,400 people. Troy, they're saying their name is Troy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that sounds familiar. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
He says he's happy to chat with it. He's not affiliated with anyone. I'm a local Doreen resident. Mm-hmm. Do you know who the person is?
I've never met him, but I know he came to the council chambers once. But the reality is, Troy needs to come clean and say, mate, this was a change.org petition. It wasn't driven by residents of Whittlesea. 70% of them are not even in Whittlesea, and the preamble was changed 24 hours before it was tabled. Now, on that premise, the governance rules should have absolutely ruled that out.
So do the rules rule it out?
Absolutely. Any petition that's designed to embarrass a councillor or to bring a council into disrepute should not pass the test. Simple. And that's
So
in the government's.
how do you if somebody had a genuinely wanted to bring up a petition for a vote of no confidence, how do you do it without breaching the rules according to like the way you'd say to do
Well,
it?
it needs to that would be driven by a councillor. So a councillor can put a vote of no confidence. The fact of vote of no confidence, it actually means nothing. You've put a mayor in there for a period of not less than 12 months. Now, a vote of no confidence just say we disagree with what you did. Because yes, I made some statements about citizenship ceremonies returning on Australia Day because that was a date set by feds. It should have nothing to do with council's input. So to me, that's fine. Keep politics, party politics, out of local government. Freeze our rates and have child-friendly areas. Now, I think that's fine. Now, if that doesn't sit well with people, that's fine. They can move a vote of no confidence.
I feel like telling Troy to come on and tell us what it was about.
For sure. Yeah, but don't forget. Absolutely, I'm happy to. But what Troy needs to understand now, he can disagree with me running for a by-election in Werribee when council wasn't sitting. That's fine. It's still my democratic right. I'm still the mayor for 12 months. I stood aside as mayor during that time, and I said some things that people didn't agree with.
Well,
And
Troy, if you want to come on,
Well,
and
I mean,
actually, if you actually want
come
to,
on.
if you actually want to come on and talk about it and flash it in front of everyone, send me an email now at avi@rebelnews.com and we'll see if we can make it happen.
But this happens a lot. Like a lot of the state MPs, they'll run for federal, and it's kind of like I don't see a big issue with it. If you want to run, you're in local council and you want to run for a state position, and things.
So
get moved
is that
around.
that's what I'm understanding? What was that? Was that
Yeah.
what the essence of the petition was? It was because
that's
you were
right.
running in a by-election.
Correct. Yeah, and that's
Okay.
fine. And look, I can understand after 9 weeks, people aren't going to understand the internal machinations of why I would run for Werribee. I'll tell you right now, it's very, very simple. The Labor Party have been my sights for a very long time now, not because I'm Liberal, because the Labor Party are so terribly toxic in their policy decisions and what they've done to Victoria. Think about it. I ran against Dan Andrews in Mulgrave. So if you want to paint a target on your back, I did that successfully in 2022. I've come into Labor heartland and ran a team of independents, and then I've got a majority of the non-Labor councillors supporting me. So of course, I had targets on my back everywhere. It's to the point that from the very first meeting, they were taking committees off me that the mayor was on by default. Already they played politics from day dot. And I shouldn't have to go around and apologise to staff for my policy positions, which I was directed to do, which they withdrew a week later. I said, hang on.
Yeah. Look, I don't see the problem in that, but I want to know. Yeah, I think it's all a bit ridiculous, the fact that you ran for a state or federal. It doesn't really matter to me. I would love to hear from Troy just to see what was the motivation. Like, was it a genuine local ratepayer
Well,
that
he
wanted
just put
you
up a
out?
comment there. Put up
What
his
is it?
comment. He said something. Steensy. There.
Yeah,
Last
no.
comment.
Troy, send me an email, avi@rebelnews.com. All you need is a phone, a camera, your phone and your camera, and you can come on here and we can talk about it. I'd be interested to know. I do agree with you, Aidan, that if it's a change.org thing, I could almost bet that the vast majority of them weren't local. It seems like a lot of people to sign a petition, not really generically, for something like that, unless it's a known, like, if it was Dan Andrews that people want to vote a no confidence, you'd get tens of thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands during COVID. But for a local mayor over such a kind of insignificant issue, it just seems odd to me, unless there is a campaign behind it, which is why I would love for Troy to join us here so we can ask him that question. So, Troy, I'm not going to keep reading your comments coming through. Avi at rebelnews.com. Send me a thing. I'll send you a link and you can join us here on this live stream and speak to your future mayor. Your past mayor. Let's move on to the other stories while Troy rings in. We're on the subject of local councils. Local councils have been making news. Let's watch this little segment from Sky News regarding the latest controversies in Victoria with local council.
You might remember last night we told you about Mornington Peninsula Shire Council in Victoria. Well, they sent out these leaflets for one of their kindergartens where they were saying, sign up for next year. And they had on the bottom, as you can see there, the Pride flag and the Aboriginal flag and the Torres Strait Islander flag, and the Australian flag was nowhere to be seen. It came up at their council meeting last night, and Councillor Bruce Rankin, good on him, came out with some pretty common sense stuff and said, well, if we're going to use flags anywhere, we also have to accompany it with the Australian flag. So that's now been passed by the council. And they've also said that within 60 days, the staff have to come back with a revised flags policy that takes all of this stuff into account, and the control of how flags are flown should be in the hands of councillors and not in the hands of staff. And good on them for responding very quickly and doing something. But can you believe, out the front of their council chambers, and you'll be able to see the photo here, they have 6 flags. I mean, they love flags. Clearly, you've got the Australian flag, the Victorian flag, the Aboriginal flag, the Torres Strait Islander flag, the Pride flag, and the council flag. So I can understand why they need a flags policy to deal with all of this stuff. But good on them for responding quickly and saying, no, this is not good enough. The Australian flag should be used if flags are being used.
You give them too much credit. They've responded quickly to this instance, but this is not the first occasion they've done.
We'll keep watching. It's great. These guys are great. I do want to point out, if you just because I want to take the credit, if you actually look at the image that they're using, because it was Rebel News audience that broke this story.
There you go.
And I like that they give me credit, because I saw everyone else. I saw like the Herald Sun a few hours later was running it like it was their piece, and they're actually using the photo from my Twitter, but they would give me credit because how dare I get it before them. Yeah, I just wanted to pat myself on the back. No, it's actually one of the viewers here that sent it in, and I appreciate it, guys. So always send your tips
with all of
Rebel
this stuff.
News
But good on them for responding quickly and saying, no, this is not good enough. The Australian flag should be used if flags are being used.
You give them too much credit. They've responded quickly to this instance, but this is not the first occasion they've done this. Last year, their Positive Ageing newsletter, which is published and put out by the council, 5 times at least. You can see on the bottom of the newsletter there, same thing. They've got the Pride flag, the Torres Strait Islander flag, the Indigenous flag, and it was only after complaints that finally, earlier this year, they changed that newsletter and put the Aussie flag on there as well. So it's not the first time this has happened, but obviously the backlash...
I didn't even know that.
I think it was because it was a kindergarten. I think that made the difference. Although I think they should have gone further than just saying the Aussie flag must be included. Why wouldn't you just say no other flags? There's one flag that unites us all, the Australian flag. All other flags, fly them on your own.
Exactly. Flag on a flyer at all.
And all other flags really do just divide us into groups. We should be focusing on uniting as a country. But the other thing I love about this is they're stripping the power off the bureaucrats. Of course, it was the bureaucrats that put the other flags and not the Australian flag onto the flyer, because that's how it often is. The long march through the institutions is underway.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah, great. Was that Freya?
Looks like her.
Yeah, it looks like Freya. Did she get a gig on?
Sounded like her. That's cool if it is. Well done to her if that's the case.
Yeah, well done.
That goes to like everything we've been speaking about. Just like how ridiculous.
I think I thought they were going to touch on this today because the timing couldn't be more perfect. But today there's a new poll was put out regarding whether Australians, I wonder if I think it was the IPA, I wonder if they dropped it today based on what was happening. Like, were they waiting for the perfect day to drop this, the poll results? But basically, I think it is, new polling shows that 3/4 of Australians believe the national flag should be retained. So I think it pretty much settles that argument, that 75% of the country believe that this flag, that the Australian flag should stay as the Australian flag. And with regards to that particular council, I didn't realise that they got in trouble for this exact same thing earlier this year, because today when I was listening to their radio interview of one of the councillors, or was it yesterday? Anyway, it's all blending into one. But the point that they were trying to make is it wasn't actually council policy. It was the kindergarten. They were throwing the kindergarten under the bus. that the kindergarten, the council kindergarten has the right to, or until now has had the right to choose whatever they want to put on there. And the council doesn't agree. They think that there should have been the Australian flag. But how does that work if, conveniently, the same council, not the kindergarten, committed the exact same offence earlier this year? Me think somebody be lying.
It sure feels that way. I mean, you say offense. I don't think it's illegal as such, if anyone wants to interpret it in that way. But they do take liberties with the way that they designate what people should identify as, what people should believe in. I mean, I live near the Yarra City Council, and all you got to do is go to the council building, and it's very obvious there that there's no Australian flags most of the time. I don't think they ever have one, and they always have banners about different woke issues or recognizing different immigrant groups and things like this, which is all great. But the biggest problem again is that these groups completely want to disassociate Australia with even existing through recognizing the flag, and that's problematic because it touches on many different problems that we have throughout society when it comes to the identity of what Australia is, and the councils seem to be at the forefront of trying to destroy that. So having pushback against it, I think, is great. And I don't know if are they being forced to do the citizenship ceremonies now, or is that just by choice? I did hear some stuff about that.
Yeah, it's up to the discretion of every council, which I think is opens up a huge problem. At the end of the day, this is what I've said. It's a federal date. It wasn't when Captain Cook landed, 26th of January.
Yeah.
If the Labor Party or Albanese wanted to change it, they would have, but they haven't. So it should never ever, that debate should never enter the local politics arena. But when you say that the local government are behind pushing this, just remember they're just an extension from the state government. So we're in a predicament now when we've got Labor back to back, state and federal. I've got very different positions on flag. I know a lot of Indigenous people, as I said, right from Queensland. Dad used to work for the Chief Minister for Indigenous Affairs. I mean, at the end of the day, white man even bought the Aboriginal flag for $20 million. The Aboriginals don't really, it's not actually, a lot of the Aboriginals don't agree with that flag because it's been purchased by the white man, ironically. And to me, it needs to be something holistic. I mean, this division of politics is what governments thrive on, to make sure that everyone's busy dividing themselves. And what it actually does, because it's divisive, it silences everybody. So you could literally put a trans flag up at a kindy now or childcare. Man, you'd be a very brave dad or mum to speak up against it, even though 90% of those dropping off don't want it.
Yeah. Well,
I just think it's very sad that people's sexuality is exploited to such a degree now that it creates instant division and silences people. It's just a art of war tactic.
It is being weaponized, because I remember after the I think 2 years ago now, after that Let Women Speak rally, and the so-called men in black shorts showed up, the neo-Nazis, and the women were there, and there was the trans rights activists. The day after all this kind of unfolded, Daniel Andrews, his act of defiance was putting up the trans flag in front of the Victorian Parliament. So you do see this interplay between politicians trying to use these identity groups within our society to further their own agenda, or build their user voter base or whatever. Like, it is very important, the flag, when it comes to these kind of left-wing groups and these kind of those type of groups. It's very important that we're separated. Whereas I think on broadly on the right and conservatives and things like this, just the one Australian flag is enough. Like, that's all we need. We include everyone in that.
I think most of the country agrees with that. Just want to stop things because I know everyone was saying Troy won't have the guts, but Troy has had the guts to come on. He's joining us now. Troy, welcome to the show.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you for calling in.
G'day,
I've got to
Troy.
give you credit for actually calling in, because the comment section was saying you were gutless. So you're certainly not that. Can you tell us what was the actual petition, and what was your problem?
As I've always said, I didn't have a problem with Aidan running in the Werribee by-election. I have no issue with that at all. My problem was, try to get this right. My issue was that being a newly elected mayor of the city of Whittlesea after 4 years of being in administrators, I just wanted better for us. I wanted things to get done. And, I called you out as soon as I saw that you were standing and running for it. And you sort of swung back saying, well, I can do it. And I totally agree. You can do it. But, sorry.
That's all good.
After 4 years, I just wanted a mayor who was actually there for us. And, yeah, you might have been on not sitting or whatever, but it was the optics that you didn't really give a shit about us. And that's what really pissed me off. And I spoke to other members around Doreen and that sort of stuff, and a lot of people were unhappy. And they're like, well, what can we do about it? And I'm like, well, let's look at a petition. And I didn't expect it to gain as much traction as it did. The petition was only shared in the Doreen Community Voice, Mernda Doreen Community Voice. It was only shared locally in 3 or 4 community groups. I do admit that the export out of change.org was shit. And then I did have to go around as well and get, I think it was 18 or 19 email signatories because the data export was crap.
Okay,
and I did raise that.
Can I ask you a couple of things? Let me ask you a couple of things. So your only problem was the fact that he did run for that election while he was sitting as mayor. It wasn't any of his politics, or do you agree with his politics?
I agree with some of them, yeah. And after 4 years of administrators, I really wanted us to go gangbusters from the get-go.
So what was
to sit back.
So what was it? Was he doing anything as the mayor besides for that you thought constitutes doing a bad job?
We hadn't seen enough, and it just felt like that he got elected by the councillors as mayor, and then sort of threw us to the side in ambition to progress his political career. And it goes back to the whole don't shit in your own back garden, and that's what it felt like for us.
What would you say, Aidan?
Oh, good on you, Troy, for coming on the show. And I'm a big supporter of freedom of speech. So I have, I uphold the right of what you did, 100%. But you're never going to know, and like any of us in a leader's position, you're never going to know the internal machination that's going on behind the scenes. Now, you can jump to the conclusion to progress my political career. Any sane person will look, and it's an hour away. I was putting my name on a ballot so that I could speak as a state candidate, because if I said what I said as a mayor, then absolutely I would have been sacked under the Local Government Act. I intentionally stood aside when council was in recess, which was January. February 8th was the election day, because there were 4 incinerators, one of which is in Whittlesea, you'd probably be aware of, in Wollert. Now, those incinerators were being pushed by Lily D'Ambrosio, which I highlighted as an election issue, which none of the Labor candidates did until the last 2 weeks. And they set up a petition amongst themselves. Now, in Werribee, there happened to also be in Laverton, was one of the areas where there was 4 incinerators at the same time. Now, I said to myself, I've been shafted in council by the Labor Party from day dot. I have been completely segregated. I couldn't even get a map. I asked for a map to be laminated. They said, you've got to go to Officeworks and we'll reimburse you. I didn't have. I felt that I was not welcome from day one. Wasn't allowed to go into most of the council areas. Only mayor in the state that doesn't get a car. Whatever. These are just small things, but what it does, it builds a story to say that I am not welcome there. And then I'm told that I have to start going around to departments and apologise to people for my policy. So they had the witch hunt out for me straight away. Obviously, I wasn't able to explain to residents like yourself to say, you know what? If this is the game you're going to play, I'm going to step aside for 3 weeks. I'm going to say everything that I did, and I held a press conference outside Parliament House to say the Local Government Act was extremely restrictive. The incinerators had to be stopped. We had to create child-friendly spaces, and we had to have a rates freeze. Now, if I said that to me, it was all over. So the reason I did it was a political tactic to step aside to be able to verbalise it, because freedom of speech is suppressed so heavily under the Local Government Act. But I can totally understand where you're coming from, where you're thinking, wow, he just got in for 9 weeks and he's chuffing off on us. What it actually did is it gave me a much, much broader platform to speak freely on critical issues affecting Whittlesea. Now, I appreciate you're not going to be able to see that, but guess what you're going to get now that I'm not there? I ran on a platform of the basics brilliantly. I can guarantee you now you'll get a 3% increase in rates. The councils have spent no time together, and I can guarantee you that they have not gone through any line items and asked where the money's going. So you're going to continue what you got for the last 4 years. And that's the point of difference that I was offering. But I totally take your point where you were coming from. My big concern was not your petition. Absolutely go for it. My concern was that it was then reformatted to the residents of Whittlesea, tabled, which was fraudulent and fabricated, not by you, but by the powers that be, to let that go through to say, yes, these 1,400 people are from Whittlesea and this is outrageous, when that was not reflective of the truth. What you did was harmless. What the organisation did after that and used it as a political tool, that was where I had the issue with.
Troy, can I ask you, are you associated in any way to the Labor Party or any party?
No.
So you're
Don't associate with anyone.
What is that?
Don't associate with anyone.
But absolutely never. You're not. You're literally a local. Yeah. Okay. And
I think it's a genuine cause. I just think it would have been heavily exploited by the Labor Party that already had it out for me many, many months prior. They would have picked up and run with that, which is fine. That's out of your power. But I absolutely have no qualms with you running a petition, and I can guarantee you there was probably a lot of people in the city thinking the same thing. However, I think in the fullness of time, they've now seen that I was suffocated from day one, and that was my only out to get a platform to start putting some of the issues facing the city. Otherwise, I know it was doomed. And you'll see now.
Is there currently a mayor, or is it all in limbo at the moment?
Yeah, so a new mayor was elected by, and here's the point: the new mayor that now sits in the council got unanimous support. Now, to me, that rings massive alarm bells, because when I went for mayor, Labor, it's in their caucus that they have to put somebody up. Labor didn't put anybody up. Why? Because they now control the council. So now Labor numbers, the majority, control the council, which was the problem before it went to administration for 4 years. So you've had Labor, you've had 3 mayors, mind you, that were pushed similarly as I have. I'm the 4th mayor now that's been pushed in this regard. So this is not a McLindon problem. This is symptomatic over the last 10 years of an internally corrupted process and poor governance. So I am just one of many in a long line. I did offer a point of difference. I was put into situations beyond my control to do things that you wouldn't normally do after being elected for 9 weeks as mayor. In
hindsight, Troy, are you happy with the outcome, or do you think looking at where the council's at now and the potential continued prolonged fight here, or are you happy with the outcome at the moment? Are you happy with the current mayor and the current council?
I mean, there's a lot of infighting and stuff that is going on in the city of Whittlesea. I do know a few people who do work there. There's always internal politics going on within a council, and hopefully stuff like the commission that's been called can help weed out some of these internal issues as well.
Do you think your petition helped? Do you think removing Aidan helped or not? Or do you feel used at all? Do you feel like they used your petition to essentially do what Aidan says here?
No, I mean, I was happy to withdraw it. At the end of the day, some of the comments
you were happy to withdraw it. Did you let the council know you were happy to withdraw it?
I submitted it to council as it was worded in the petition. Added the signatures through. I was happy to withdraw it if the bullshit stopped. And unfortunately, sometimes you see a guy swinging on his way down, and some of the stuff that I saw, which is I can't find on social media anymore, has disappeared. Some of the comments actually pissed me off a lot more. And I'm like, this guy is going in preservation mode, and he's really not showing us how a mayor could act in the city of Whittlesea for us.
So you thought at the time Aidan's reaction to being voted out, or the vote in itself using of that petition, you weren't happy with his reaction to it at the time?
The comments that it was a political machine, I'm on all that sort of stuff. I left my contact details in the petition. I was happy. News outlets contacted me, asked for my information, my side of the story, and I've always said to them, I'm happy to sit down and discuss it.
You clearly are. You're here to do it, and you did it with no qualms. But my question is,
and I was actually at your rally, Aidan. I was up the back.
Why were you there?
Was that the rates freeze? The one at the?
No, the one with your lawyer that you had.
Oh yeah. When I was blocked out of the chambers, yeah. And
Yep,
I reckon
I was standing up the back.
Why did you
And
go
I
to
think-
that?
I wanted to hear what he had to say.
By the end of it, did you feel like he shouldn't have been pushed out, or at that time you still agreed he did? And do you now think he should be let back in or not?
I never had an issue with him being as a councillor, as he's pointed out. He did get the primary vote well and clear, and kudos to you. That's fantastic. But the issue that I had was we felt like we were second best when you were trying to move into Werribee, and as the elected councillor and then the mayor, it was just, mate, yeah, just how do I put it? You just have to shut the fuck up.
Yeah, and look, and I appreciate that point of view, Troy. And I think what happened, as I've, I can't divulge everything here. Obviously, there's some things before
No,
the
of course.
courts, but it's not a normal reaction for a mayor to 9 weeks later want to run for something. So just understand, It wasn't my intent ever to win where it doesn't make sense for a start. It was purely to get, as I said, the incinerators, the rates freeze, the local government act review, things that obviously I was constrained heavily internally. And I think, as I said, what you get now, the disappointing thing in all this is that I was pinned up against the wall from day one. When you want to still struggle and survive, you're going to be an equal and
You're
opposite
going to fight,
reaction.
mate.
100%. And then, so what I've tried to say to people, what you did was totally fine with what you did. My point, it was heavily utilised. They've picked up with that. The political machines run with it. And I think they've exploited and distorted the original intent of it. And I think once you see now, you will probably get a majority of councils. There's some good ones in there. As I said, there's some naive ones and still learning, etc. And it's a very toxic culture. And you can see that by 900 employees out of the 1,300 in the last 3 years have left. Now, that's huge. That's massive. So, obviously, this is symptom. I'm the fourth mayor this has happened to now. So, obviously, I tried something different. What you will see now is an increase of 3%. You will get all those social and economic issues.
We've gone through that. I want to understand. While I have Troy here, what are the issues that matter to you in that local council? What do you care about?
That's basically what Aidan stands for. Do the basics brilliantly. We went through years of long grass.
So I guess, do you regret pushing out one councillor or being used to push out one councillor who was fighting for that exact thing? Doesn't want the council. Do you want the council involved in all the woke stuff?
I just want the council to cancel and do it well.
When you say council, because I want to be really clear on the definition. Like, do you want them to be involved in all that virtue signalling? Putting up pride days and all the stuff that we've been discussing today. Talking about
everything has its place. I do have a trans brother. I see the left and the right of it. And at the end of the day, we're all human. We all need to live together. We all need to get along.
Do you think it's the council's role?
Not to a point. I mean, inclusivity and all the rest of it is great. But when you start to divide and conquer and split people up,
do you agree
that's where
Aidan, do you agree Aidan's kind of campaign to de-wokeify the council and make them focus on the roads, rates and rubbish was good and what we should be trying to achieve?
I guess to a point, yeah.
What's the point then? I want to know what point.
I probably need to think about that one. It's been up since 4 a.m. this morning, so my brain's...
Sure. I guess the reason why I'm asking, I really appreciate you coming on, and I love this, but I guess I want to know if there was any, behind the scene, even unconscious will to have him removed from a political point of view or not. So when you say that you want the council to do the basics brilliantly, it sounds like you do kind of like some of their woke stuff, or at least to a point, which is not
to a point.
Yeah. So did Aidan's policies with that, did that annoy you? Did that rub you up the wrong way? No. Okay.
No. Rates are rates. I pay my share, and at the end of the day, when I get a a new bin with a red lid because they need red lids. That's stuff I'm like, why are we wasting money on something like that?
Hey, Troy, that was the state government, by the way, but they've once again got council to do the dirty work.
Yep. And that's stuff like that. I'm a landholder as well. I'm also a volunteer, and the land tax that's coming through and all that sort of stuff. That's, we need that to be held up.
Troy,
That's the stuff.
can I suggest that you run for council, mate? Because I think I need more blokes like you on there, to be honest.
I was actually thinking about it.
Well, take it seriously, because I reckon.
Why don't you guys do a joint ticket? I feel like that's the poetic justice to this story. If you two join forces, I really do want to know. You're going to have to work it out before you run what your to the point is, because personally, I don't think councils should be involved in any of that unless you're saying to the point of just being respectful as humans to each other. But I think that should just be the adult way of engaging in life. I don't think that the council should be dictating anything about social behaviours or international affairs or about the anthem or about the flag or about any stupid woke issue. I just want them to pick up my bloody rubbish. I want them to deal with the rates. I want them to keep them low, and I want them to keep whatever their basic job is. Don't need all that other stuff. If that's
basic function.
If that's what it is, then I think you guys should run on a joint ticket, and maybe you should even start a new petition to bring Aidan back because they used you to kick him out.
Troy, I think you and I need to have lunch outside of this forum, and we can swap a few notes. And I reckon we've got a bit of an opportunity to get things right.
I'll share your email to Aidan after this. I really appreciate you coming on and facing him like a man.
Good man.
No worries, and that's what it's all about. If you're going to put your foot forward, stand up to it.
Listen, most people don't on the internet, so well done.
Thanks, Aidan.
No worries. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, bro. That was a very interesting viewing. I was observing and watching that whole interaction, and I mean that's kind of a direct democracy type situation, and all these kind of things going on together. So
he seems like a genuine guy. I got to say,
I want him to send a petition into the Victorian state government about Jacinta Allen. I think he might be effective.
I don't think he'll be as successful. I get this weird feeling that they're just not going to take it as seriously. It was interesting because when he dropped the "I have a trans brother," it made me a little bit suspicious. Okay, so does that mean? But it doesn't mean anything. I've got brothers. I've got a gay brother. I've got a brother that makes me seem left wing. I've got a brother that's so far left that he makes me crazy. Having a brother of whatever doesn't mean anything about you or your politics, but it did raise a red flag. That's why I kind of pushed him a bit. But I feel like he's genuine. I don't think he cares 100%. About that stuff.
I think on face value, regardless of personal life stories, I think he was there genuinely. Good on him for getting the guts out there, and I think his petition was genuine, absolutely, but obviously used as a political tool. And I honestly believe if we had people like him in the council, Whittlesea would be much better off than it currently is.
No, it's very interesting.
Oh yeah, that was a good point somebody just made. Is the trans brother a woman? I didn't want to get into that. That was a person, and he made it he wasn't standing on that as a campaign. So it is what it is.
I appreciate his honesty. He didn't have to divulge any of that.
Looks like he just took great offence to the mayor running.
Which is fair enough. I can understand that. I can understand that, and that's fair. And I do also, both of those things could be true at the same time. That a genuine ratepayer who seems engaged, he's going to council meetings, he even went to your thing, so he's super engaged in local government, he cares, and he got annoyed, he started a petition, posted it in the local group, and you know what, I am probably not as confident now that the change.org was completely full of strangers, because he says he posted it just in the local group. Now, having said that, I know also how the internet functions, so there probably were a few lefties in there that that may have spread it in their left-wing groups, going, "Hey, there's a petition to get rid of this Aidan who's anti-woke." So, but I do think he really started it from a good place at a grassroots level. That then the second part of it that is possibly and probably also true is that those left-wing forces from within council, i.e. the Labor Party, I don't know if the Greens are there as well, they found their opportunity, just like those in the local Doreen group probably also found their opportunity.
Yeah, and you have to understand too, Arvin Rukshan, things happen so rapidly in that 9 weeks. If the community was privy to what happened to me in the first week and the second week and the third week, they'd be outraged. And I'm still constrained in what I can and can't say because what's before the courts. And I'm thinking, this is not, it was less than a figurehead. It's like, here's the rubber stamp, but before you do it, go around and apologise to the staff for your policy positions. Now, if that doesn't ring alarm bells that the organisation's politicised, then I don't know what does. And I think in Troy's defence, happened so rapidly. He's going, what? He's jumping off already? But when you sit down and talk with him and explain it, which obviously I don't have time to do to 230,000 people, people can start seeing that politics is not all what it seems on the outside.
Why didn't you engage with him when the petition came out? Because he says he had his name and details on there. Why didn't you give him a call?
I was working around the clock like they wouldn't believe it. I didn't see a reason to. It's like, that's fine, because there was no reason to engage. I didn't need to diffuse it. That's fine. Like, I'm a big believer in freedom of speech, and I've even at times in council given the Labor councillors more airtime or extended their time or given them fair hits. I've never, I always support people to attack the issue, but I've never attacked the person. But what I got from retaliation from the Labor Party, it was personalised. I've got police reports in there. I was threatened. I had someone wind the window down in a Ram truck and point the fingers in the shape of a gun to me. There's police reports. I spent 4 hours at the Mill Park Police Station. Like, I was forced out of my family home. Like, what my family has gone through, I could get the violin out and talk for weeks. And no person should go through what I've been through when you're just putting your hand up to say, hey, let's do the basics brilliantly. That's when you know something's wrong with democracy.
So to be clear now, because I know in the beginning of the show, you suspected that it was a Labor operative that started the petition, pushed it around. Now you're confident it wasn't.
Yeah, I think it was exploited. They've run with something, yeah.
And your problem. Well, I guess if you thought it was a Labor operative, why didn't you contact them at that point?
I'd been under the pump from the Labor Party since the expose on Lily D'Ambrosio 5 months earlier when I was trying to stop the incinerator. Yeah, so the incinerator, what I got from the Labor Party was just constant. I have Islamophobic.
So you just assumed and you felt no reason to actually contact him. But now look at this. We've clarified it live on air that it was a genuine ratepayer. There must be a certain degree, probably larger than we thought, of a genuine local ratepayers that got behind it. And then it was exploited.
To get 200 or 300 signatures locally, yeah, absolutely. But to me, it wasn't even a worry. Like, of course, someone's going to jump up and down. That's fair enough. It's democracy.
It sounds like he's going to certainly regret at some point if he doesn't
that's
already.
Not his fault. So I don't think he's got anything to regret about. I think he's got to see that, politics, people are going to exploit you at some point in time.
No, I think he's going to regret making the petition only because he seems to genuinely care about doing the basics brilliantly, and now he's just going to have a bit more of what they've had, which is woke identity politics for the next whatever amount of years, unless you get back in.
Oh, look, and you have to understand, when I was campaigning, I filmed a roundabout with 2.2 metre high grass at a roundabout on a local road. Like, that takes longer than 18 months to grow. So they definitely, and the rubbish, grass, they just wanted the basics done brilliantly. So I totally understand where he's coming from. But I think once the community understands what was going on behind the scenes, it makes a lot more sense now that you can't have bureaucracy doing what they did to me.
Somebody says... I would make a great marriage counsellor.
I mean, you were doing the whole thing of like, okay, Troy, now tell me your side of the story. Okay, now Aidan, tell me your side. Now, guys, how can we reconcile this? Actually, why don't you guys work together? So
hold on. I want to be super clear here. At no point in that cross here was I trying to reconcile. In fact, I was quite annoyed at the point that
You
I
got a firework.
realized that this was not going to be a fight, and they actually were probably on the same side. I was quite disappointed in that, and I
Well,
was really
Harvey, look-
hoping Troy was not going to be a good bloke, but he turned out to be a genuine, decent guy.
Avi, you could have saved hundreds of thousands of dollars of ratepayers' money, and you could have done the commission of inquiry in that half an hour, mate. You just did a Dr. Phil Australian style.
Look, we've got to just figure out how to do more of this. Like I want, but next time we want actual
someone was
debate. We
suggesting
want
should,
angry
we
people.
should
From
have-
now on,
someone was saying we should have every week when we have a guest on, we should have an audience member call in and ask them questions if they have any questions.
I'm happy to do that,
Yeah.
but we want angry audience. So
You want to?
we don't want Troy. Troy, you're not allowed back on. You're too kind. All right, let's. We've really unpacked that. I think further than we even expected to be unpacking it. So we've got about 20 minutes left. Let's just hit some of the other stories making news around the world now, because there's one story I'm loving because it's triggering all the right people.
The recent terror attack in Boulder, Colorado, has underscored the extreme dangers posed to our country by the entry of foreign nationals who are not properly vetted, as well as those who come here as temporary visitors and overstay their visas. We don't want them. In the 21st century, we've seen one terror attack after another carried out by foreign visa overstayers from dangerous places all over the world. And thanks to Biden's open door policies, today there are millions and millions of these illegals who should not be in our country. In my first term, my powerful travel restrictions were one of our most successful policies, and they were a key part of preventing major foreign terror attacks on American soil. We will not let what happened in Europe happen to America. That's why on my first day back in office, I directed the Secretary of State to perform a security review of high-risk regions and make recommendations for where restrictions should be imposed. Among the national security threats, their analysis considered are the large-scale presence of terrorists, failure to cooperate on visa security, inability to verify travelers' identities, inadequate record-keeping of criminal histories, and persistently high rates of illegal visa overstays, and other things. Very simply, we cannot have open migration from any country where we cannot safely and reliably vet and screen those who seek to enter the United States. That is why today I am signing a new executive order placing travel restrictions on countries including Yemen, Somalia, Haiti, Libya, and numerous others. The strength of the restrictions we're applying depends on the severity of the threat posed. The list is subject to revision based on whether material improvements are made, and likewise, new countries can be added as threats emerge around the world. But we will not allow people to enter our country who wish to do us harm, and nothing will stop us from keeping America safe. Thank you very much.
I've got to say, I fully support banning the Yemen.
Yeah, ban the Yemenis.
First of all, the only thing I'm disappointed about the Sri Lankans didn't make the list.
Mate, this is the thing, right? So what Trump is saying there, essentially, I mean, he's done this before, obviously.
Last time they called it the Muslim ban.
The Muslim ban, right? It was essentially the same thing that he's doing right now.
Yeah.
And this is common sense politics. And you got to look at Trump today, and you can see that he's kind of really coming to the role as president in a very comfortable manner. We're just dictating all these things. There's no real opposition in terms of the Democrats. They're all fully defeated. And he's just saying, like, this is just how it's going to be now, because they do have to control these issues that they're having in America, where you have all these, like Trump said, these foreigners coming in that wish to do harm to the country. Like, why should that be tolerated in any country? It makes absolutely no sense. And to have people coming in from countries which are hostile to you, with terrorist groups and ideologies which are hostile to the United States of America, that you're asking for trouble. So of course this should be done away with in the fashion that Trump is doing, and he's actually even giving them the opportunity to redress it and fix their issues, and maybe even open it up again. So he is just being a decent, smart politician who's looking after his country and his people. And I think more politicians, the Australian leader Albanese should think in this vein as well. I think we'd be much better off.
Aidan, what's your reaction to this?
Look, there's
Trump?
always going to be there's going to be unintended consequences for blanket calls like that. And I remember when I was the national director for Bob Catter, he would always say that we had to have stronger vetting for countries that spawned terrorism. Now that makes sense, yeah. But obviously, there's going to be people caught up in that who genuinely want to escape the conflict. So there is that danger of generalising, say that anybody from that country is dangerous. Is there a higher level and a higher risk from country to country? Yes, probably. But I think it's symptomatic of an equal and opposite reaction where some of those statements might be aspirational. Whether they actually occur to the T is another question. But I think we've really got to manage ourselves. It's sad for me, particularly in Whittlesea, where there's homeless people living in bushes, and yet, and there's people under 40. There's no way they're going to afford a home. There's basics that we haven't got right here, and because we have a fairly unvetted process and huge numbers, it's going to be complicated. There's going to be problems, but it goes back to individual responsibility. If you've stuffed up and you haven't assimilated and you've hurt or you've done harm in this country, then I think, I'm sorry, you had a good chance to start fresh and a new life. And if you've rejected that and brought things to this country that that don't deserve to be here or warrant be here, then there has to be a consequence for that.
I was going to say, I understand the concern about a blanket ban per se, but I still think in certain circumstances warrant a blanket ban.
Yeah,
we should have asylum programs. We should have asylum programs. We should have, humanitarian programs. All that stuff is nice and great, but there comes to a point where you can't really tell what is in the heart of some of these individuals who are coming to this country. And now we have this. That's the problem, right? We have all these refugee programs opened up from a war zone in Gaza, bringing people in, and I think ideologically they're at odds with the Australian values and the way that we see the world and what we see as right and wrong.
Like, I'd argue that the unintended consequences is worse and more dangerous the other way around. So yes, the unintended consequences of a blanket ban is that you may lose some decent people. You probably will, of course. But the unintended consequences of not blanket banning them means you're probably going to bring bad people in as well. That's the whole point. And that's why, it's to be able to come to Australia is the biggest gift anyone can get, I would argue, of anything. It's, we are the luckiest country still for now. But if you keep doing that, if we keep bringing in people from crazy places who import, ideologies that are incompatible with our way of life, then you are going to end up like the places they tried to escape, or at least the good ones tried to escape.
Yeah, I think,
and I think the double whammy on that is, the Australian values have been compromised so much. We are actually going through an identity crisis as a country. We were losing.
Did he just?
A common reference point between each other, regardless of what your culture, of what we are.
I think Aidan cut out there for a little bit.
For a bit.
He's touching on the more broader point of Australian identity, but I think governments, in the West for a long time have not thought about the impacts of immigration into their country in terms of how that changes the identity. UK is a great example. We talk about it all the time. They're going through a crisis because they've just been importing people from all around the world that, frankly, hate the Western way of life, and they want to impose their own. Whether it's a religious ideological doctrine or a way of thinking which is foreign to Western tradition. And they have almost like no levers to control that. So we have to, at a fundamental level, ask these governments, especially in countries like Australia, because I think we still have a brief window of opportunity to stop that from getting to the point where it's like not, where you can't reverse it anymore. We have to ask them to be more responsible with allowing immigration into Australia with compatible cultures, compatible peoples, and people that respect the Australian way of life and Western traditions. I don't think we need to be this, open for all, bring all your cultural problems and your, protests here and protests about your wars here, come here. I don't think it helps Australian society at all. And to your point before, Aidan, homeless Australians and veterans living on the street and things like this, number one priority should go to that rather than trying to be the, the world's savior. Because more often than not, I don't think we help the country when we're trying to do that, first of all. And then the people that come here, when we don't have that national identity, then, well, you have another crisis on hand where people are fighting within the country itself. And we've seen that today in Australia with the Jewish population, as well as, people from the Middle East, Muslims or Arabic peoples that are infighting within Australia. And that's impacting the rest of us who have nothing to do with it. So these are considerations I think countries have to make, leaders have to make, and I think Trump is doing the right thing by being very forceful on this.
Okay, so let's. Aidan has a Telstra internet connection. Aidan, is that true?
Yeah, possibly.
All right, guys, remember, we need a few super chats, so Rukshan actually has something to do tonight. So smash out a couple of those super chats, which also helps us support the show. So if you love us, super chat us, and we will read them, or Rukshan will read them, because he hasn't done anything today. But I want to go on to quickly the last couple of stories making news. This time back to Australia.
To get the latest on what looks like an impending Tasmanian snap election, I want to bring in our reporter in the Apple Isle who has been watching proceedings very closely, Selena Bryan. Selena, what a day. How did the no confidence motion play out?
So it was actually brought in yesterday. So we had debate all through the day yesterday, and then that continued today, culminating with the final speaker, which was the Speaker of the House, Michelle O'Byrne. Now, she's a Labor MP. So as expected, she had the casting vote on this. And so we were expecting that it would be that kind of 17-17 split with her as the casting vote. So she did choose to stand up and justify why she was going to be voting the way that she did in support of the no confidence motion against the Premier, Jeremy Rockliff. And she reiterated that she's a lifelong Labor member, and that was part of her decision there. Then they had the vote, and as expected, it was 17-17 with the casting vote from Michelle O'Byrne, making that a successful motion of no confidence against the Premier. Then we've heard from the Premier. He got up to speak, and he expressed his disappointment about the personal nature of this no confidence motion. It wasn't against the Liberal government. It was against him as the Premier, as the Liberal leader. He expressed that he was disappointed about that personal nature and spoke about his record as Premier and as an MP for Tasmania. He also reiterated his support for the stadium, for the AFL team for Tasmania, and his deep disappointment if that doesn't go ahead because of the way that all this has played out today. Now, he also reiterated he will be coming here to Government House to ask the Governor to call an early election if Dean Winter, the opposition leader, can't form a working majority on the floor of the Parliament. That is unlikely because he has stated he won't be doing any deals or making any agreements with the Greens. Labor only has 10 seats on the floor of the House, and the Greens have 5, and there's more on the crossbench as well. So Labor would be relying on those crossbench members to form a working government, and it doesn't look like that's what they're planning to do. So it looks like we are headed to an early election.
It certainly does look that way. So what happens now? How does this play out in the coming hours?
So we're expecting that Jeremy Rockliff will follow through what he said. As I understand that Parliament has just risen now. So very shortly, we're expecting that he will be driving up here to speak to come to Government House. It's not actually the government in residence. She's overseas at the moment. So it is the Lieutenant Governor who he will be speaking to today and who will be making that decision. Now, the Lieutenant Governor could decide that the Liberals need to consider whether someone else could be the leader of the Liberal Party and the leader of the government there, or whether he could ask Dean Winter to try to form a government. But as I've said, Labor looks like that could be too much of a challenge for them at this point, given their stance on the Greens in particular. So the more likely outcome that everyone seems to be thinking will happen is that we'll be going to an early election. And that will be our 4th in just 7 years.
I was about to say, Selena, you are getting very expert at elections. It's extraordinary, and we will wait for more updates throughout the afternoon.
So a couple of things there. Firstly, so that's a no confidence, kind of like yours, but not spurred on by petition. It was the internal fighting of the Liberal Party. See, that's how much I followed Tasmania politics. I didn't even know that it was a Liberal Party that was in power. Having said that, I think the Liberal Party of Tasmania is already not Labor light. It's Labor, and the Labor Party is the Greens, and the Greens have already gone National Socialist. So, what's your reaction to this news?
Look, I remember doing it. It reminisces when I did my first university assignment in my political degree, and it said, what's in charge more, government or business? And at the end of whatever it was, 2,000 or 3,000 words, I came to the conclusion that it was business in charge. So when you look at these no confidence things...
but look what's happened now.
Sorry.
I mean, this all happened.
Yep.
That's all right. So when you look at what you see on the surface, and we sort of witnessed it previously with Troy and I, what may appear on the outside to Troy, when they have a bit of an appreciation, a bit of depth of what's going on, it makes sense. So it's never going to make sense to common players, and we're common players because we're in the football stands. We're not on the field. So what are the impacts of? There are a lot of variables there. What are the impacts of the people selling out, changing their positions on things, wheeling and dealing behind the back, the business influence in it. I mean, the list goes on. It just reaffirms too that I think we have I think it goes without saying we have a defunct Liberal Party. Are we going to have a Menzies 2.0? I don't think so. We're probably going to have a split of the Labor Party, of the left and right, before we see a revival of any sort of Liberal Party or point of difference. So I think Australia is probably in the long term, the next 20, 30 years, hopefully set for a multi-party system where major parties will struggle to get 20% of the primary. And that could be a good thing for us, having a volatile parliament where it actually becomes the pursuit of best policy again and not just opposing things for the sake of it. But I think Tasmania is going to have its own little internal problems, and they may end up after election, nothing much probably will change from the numbers.
Why do Aussies seem so happy to get rid of Tasmania? My wife's from Tasmania. I feel like we just pick on Tasmania. Like, all the comments are saying, give it to America, let it be the 52nd state. I think they're counting Canada already.
Well, I think there's been I think since our forefathers gave 12 senators to every state, I think there's been some animosity ever since that occurred, because it's quite a disproportionate representation in comparison to the rest of Australia.
That's a fair call, actually.
That is true. So finally, unless Rukshan, you wanted to add something to the whole Tasmania?
I am not. I'm not versed in Tasmanian politics, but it does look like, in Victoria, for instance, we have all the issues with our suburban rail loop and all these kind of big projects that kind of don't go anywhere. But in Tasmania, it seems like things like the Spirit of Tasmania, this stadium, these football deals, they kind
have
of
you been to Tasmania?
I have been to Tasmania, yeah, on the Spirit of Tasmania.
I went on the
it's a
Spirit
beautiful,
of Tasmania.
beautiful place. It's beautiful.
I went before they moved it to Geelong. I would never go on the Spirit of Tasmania was actually all right. Like, I enjoyed that whole overnight trip at the bar, have a few drinks with the wife, the kids, going to one of the cabins. Like, it was a fun experience. But now that it's in Geelong, there's no way I'll do that. And but Tasmania itself, I've never seen so much roadkill ever.
Well, that's the thing. So I ended up driving one day. Like, we didn't drive at the right time. We ended up driving like late at night through one of these kind of wilderness areas, and the amount of whatever I was hitting through that entire drive, it was kind of traumatic, because you're constantly running over little animals. Like, there's so much like roadkill on Tasmanian roads because it's so kind of wild there. So I learned a good lesson there, not to drive at night in Tasmania.
But it's nice. It is a cool spot. I actually do like Tasmania, and it did produce my wife, so I'm grateful for that whenever she's.
But my point was, like, these things, it's like things that we kind of overlook here sometimes. These things, because it's, I guess, such a small concentrated population, has a major impact on their politics to this extent, and that's why we're seeing some of this. So it'll be interesting, I think. So Tasmania, you're saying, was a liberal, right?
They just recently won that.
Yeah, recently, yeah. So it was kind of the only liberal holdout in, if you look at it as a country, from all the different states. So that might also now flip to Labor. So yeah, it's all red Australia.
We've got a couple of legends who actually listened to our my plea for super chats, and we got some super chats for you to read, Rukshan. Now you don't have to message me at the end of the night going, I had nothing to do this show.
This is from Arclight. Thanks for the super chat, mate. How can conservatives and real independents organise on the same scale as a left-wing activist to win local government races?
It's such a problem, because it's a good question. Thanks for the super chat, seriously. Because fundamentally, the right have a problem. They're just not activists like the left, and they don't activate like the left. It's just a difference in personality, way of life. They're busy with their actual jobs, and they're the right are more into personal, individual rights, and less government, and so they don't hit the streets. When you look at rallies from the right, they're always far smaller. Does that mean that they don't care about the issue? Well, if you look at the for example, the vote yes and no for the voice to Parliament, if you would have believed the activist class, if you would have believed the noise, then the yes campaign would have won by far. If you would have believed the rallies, the Black Lives Matter rallies on the streets, you would have believed that the activists, that the left would have won. But the right just it's not in their blood. I don't think it's in their system to do that. What do you reckon, Aidan? You've been involved in politics for so long.
Yeah, it's interesting because I reckon you look at the education system. I started my political degree back in '97, and you have to understand, what's happening now is they're reaping what they sowed 30 years ago. So the infiltration of the education system is now coming to the point. We think things got so crazy. Well, it didn't happen overnight. And as you said, a lot of the people who believe in a merit-based society, freedom of the individual, they're busy being busy doing what they do best, which is staying out of government. But unfortunately, the left, and particularly the Labor Party, they don't even have to reinvent themselves. I mean, for me, the Labor Party have completely walked away from the working class. But what's happened for the 18 to 30-year-old demographic? You're going to have cannabis. You're going to have the socialists. And you're going to have the rise of the Communism Party, because unfortunately they don't have very high intelligentsia, and they get such a one-sided view at the university system. So they capture them emotionally by the time they're 18, 19, 20. And if they have a sense of belonging and they go to the barbecues and they socialise and they do all these things, don't underestimate that the Labor Party is in just as much crisis as the Liberal Party. In terms of their branch members. You're lucky to get a dozen of them. A lot of them are over 70-year-old, and they might get emotionally charged for the voting booth because there might be something in it for them, or they've dragged out their aunties and uncles and neighbours dogs. But the reality is mainstream politics in the Labor and Liberal is at a crisis point in both parties. Don't think it's just the Liberal Party. I think the Labor Party have a huge identity crisis, and it's the people like Glenn Drury who understand how to constantly keep reinventing pop-up parties and feeding back to the Labor Party that keeps this sort of dead carcass, making it look like it's alive. But just remember, more than 65% of people did not vote the Labor Party. So, we have to start looking at finding innovative ways to present different demographics and getting the young people involved again. And we've got to have good policy. There has to be a depth of policy saying, why are we paying payroll tax? You get rid of payroll tax on any small business, for example, that's turning over less than 20 mil, you'll create 60,000 jobs overnight on the premise that they can, as long as they put one more employee on there, get rid of payroll tax. Because if you empower the consumer, you get those taxes back anyway. But unfortunately, Labor and Liberal, they're lazy. All they're doing now, 25 cents a litre of fuel, they're trying to rob Peter to pay Paul. That's not innovative policy. That's just playing politics, and people can see it. They don't believe in the major parties anymore. Anyway, I hope we're heading towards a multi-party system and that we get more young people involved, because unfortunately, good people, it's a traumatic experience now, because when good people go in there, they get hung, drawn and quartered, and it sort of sends a message to everyone else who wants to make change that you just stick to your lane.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes to like you're saying, Arvin, people on the right, conservatives might not as protest as much or bring up issues as much in the workplace even, or things like this. I think a lot of it has to do with that kind of cancel culture perception. Some people just don't want to get involved in the way that social media and all these kind of things have shifted. Just people having a basic opinion about something, and you could lose your job, and things like this have really affected people who are more sane when it comes to a lot of the craziness that we're seeing around the world. So I think that has a major impact. I think we've also lost the institutional backing of very traditional foundational Western institutions like the church, for instance. At one point, I'm not saying the church should be involved in politics, but at one point, like your local parish and people like in these community groups might have a certain view and have a lot more influence over that community to be have a voice and be involved in protecting certain things. And I think that was kind of the way things were maybe 60, 70 years ago, whereas we've lost a lot of that. So when it comes to these kind of conservative, right-leaning issues, a lot of the times, the people that can speak out about it are the people that are willing to take the risks, like Aidan and many other people that you see who are outspoken, who have to take the arrows and be subjugated to all types of attacks from the political class as well as the media class to actually be out there. And we saw that very openly during COVID. Like, how hard was it for people to slowly break that system and that pattern down and start having a voice against what was very obviously something that was really wrong that was being done to them. It took a lot of time and a lot of not persuasion, but just showing people what was happening for people to start speaking out. And then you saw the floodgates open, you saw people turn up, the protests got bigger and bigger and bigger. So it is possible. There are people out there that have the same views and opinions. It just needs to come from a place where they know that they kind of feel safe in the sense that they're not going to be targeted and other people are going to speak out for them as well.
Avi and Rukshan, do you mind if I'll give you a 30-second suggestion, which is what I think needs to happen in politics?
Yeah.
You need a party doesn't have a reference point to one person. So not a Bob Catter or a Clive Palmer or a Pauline Hanson. Has to be generic in nature.
What about the Trumpets of Patriot?
Yeah, so I mean, they've tried that a few times. So what my point is, I think you need a generic one. You need create shadow ministers outside the parliament, because in Westminster system you can. Anyone can be shadow minister. I started a shadow ministry when I started the Queensland Party when I was 30 years old. It gets runs on the board. You can have a shadow minister for tourism, for education. They get in the papers as the shadow ministers. The only one with formal recognition is the minister in the parliament. You run a parallel parliament from the outside that builds and builds and builds, which is what Nigel Farage is doing at the moment, okay, with a generic name, with 3, maybe 5 at most, key points that are common sense that most people believe in, they will find a go-to. The problem is obviously the personalities and the egos that get in the way. But once you get one generic party like the Reform movement, and they've got to, I would never have said this 10 years ago, they've got to push for a republic, because the next big battle will be a republic, and it's going to be on the left terms. We've got to get in there, create a republic where we can actually detach from the globalisation that's going on, regain our sovereignty and our autonomy by getting in first, because we're going to get it anyway on their terms. So whoever goes on a republic first, I'm telling you now, the numbers are already there for a republic. In 1999, under Malcolm Turnbull, it was 51%, 49%. I reckon it's sitting at about 65-35 in favour of, but it's going to be to the globalists and to the left if we don't move in fast and start putting something forward that we can say yes, because we're always on the defensive saying no. Let's lead the charge and be bold and do it on our terms.
Food for thought right there. All right, Super Chat, I'll read this one because I think they're talking about mine. So thank you, Baz. I wouldn't even... Lee. We'll go with Baz Lee. Thanks so much for the Super Chat. And I think you're talking about this. Do you like it? You like the T-shirt there? It's you can get it. Let me see if I've got do I have the button for it? I haven't used it today. There is a button somewhere for that. There is. Oh, here we go. So you can get it. Oh, I probably should remove your comment first. I'm confusing myself with all these. Rebelstore.com.au. You can get yourself one of these pride flags that I like to wear on the show. But thank you so much for the Super Chat. And now there's actually a really big Super Chat, and it's funny because Rukshan's going to love reading this one.
Abby King, thanks for the Super Chat. Oh, wow.
That's
Thank you,
a wild
Abby.
Super Chat. There you go.
Rukshan, you always refuse money when filming during COVID. Love you too, Avi, but this one's for Rukshan. Great show tonight, guys. Thank you, Abby. It's so kind of you.
Rukshan, you're paying for dinner when we leave.
He'll find a way, Abby, to get that money off me one way or another.
Abby, thank you so much. You're one of our most loyal, I think you are probably our most loyal Super Chatter, and we really appreciate it, because without the Super Chats, it makes it a lot harder to run these. So we really appreciate it. We've got one more story, and then I think we promised we'll watch that video. So let's quickly hit that story. Here we go. John Pizzuto closing in on rescue package to avoid bankruptcy. So that's obviously in reference to the Moira Deeming $2.3 million legal debt. It looks like, I believe, so multiple senior Liberal sources have told the Herald Sun that Mr. Pizzuto has become increasingly confident of a deal being done with an entity closely tied to the party that would see him loaned up to $1.5 million, which would allow him to honour the debt. Has he already, I guess he's raised, how much did he raise? A few $100,000, and he probably has a few $100,000 of his own. But this is kind of wild. I don't mind if someone loans him the money. I don't think anyone should be paying it. And good, pay it off forever. Like, you deserve it. What's your reaction, Rukshan?
Oh, look, I've been maintained that he deserves it. He asked
Do you have
for
a problem with him borrowing the money from somebody closely tied to the Liberal Party?
I don't care. I don't know if he. I was going to say. I was trying to think of some smart ass joke about looking it up on Wikipedia to see who lent him the money and what connections there were. But look, I mean, I don't care about that. That's the Liberal Party for you.
I hope he gets the worst interest rate. This is what I hope happens.
Well,
I hope he gets the worst interest rate, and then he defaults on the loan, and then the person can't get it back, so it punishes him, then ends up punishing the one that come to bail him out. I just want everyone punished. I want him.
But I mean, they have to bail him out because they all backed him. Like all those Liberal leaders.
I think they're doing that
because
because
people have backed him.
I reckon they're doing it because they're potentially up for it as well now, because Moira served him, so it's probably that group that have gone, oh crap, we might have to, that they might come after us at the end of, like, if he goes bankrupt, they come after us, then we have to pay it and we don't get anything back. So now that this is probably them saving themselves as well, where so that he ends up paying them back over time. That seems like probably what's happening. What do you reckon, Aidan?
Oh, look, I reckon anyone who voted against Moira to get out of the party room, they should probably all split the bill, because at the end of the day, Prosecco, he's just like a mayor basically. He's a figurehead speaking on behalf of everybody, and he's been hung out to dry. So I reckon he should probably divvy it up between everyone who decided to have dinner with him, and then that way it's probably a bit more palatable, and they can take a bit of ownership. Otherwise, the Liberal Party will just keep being musical chairs like they have for the last 15 years. It's very, very disappointing.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that there wasn't like one statesman or one Liberal, previous leader that kind of said, "Hey, look, mate, this seems a bit silly. This whole thing seems a bit ridiculous. Like, pull your socks up and apologize or whatever. Just like make some backroom deal with Moira. Whatever needed to happen. Just get that done. Embarrass yourself for like a week or so and move on." But he went all in.
Look, went all out.
Like a spaz.
He should have admitted the mistake, stood by, and I actually went into I spoke to all the MPs when I put my application in, and then withdrew it to join the Libs, and I don't know why I did it. I must have had a bit of a brain freeze, but I told them, I said, there's no men amongst you who you can't just, who actually came out and supported Moira. This is the problem. There's very little courage in there. Even the ones that did support her quiet in the party room, they need to bang the drum and say, hey, we're with you, double down. What has she done wrong? I mean, Moira should be leading the party. And I think, if that's anybody's, anyone can see that a mile away. And obviously she's in the upper house, but if she does something bold and brave, I reckon there's 10% primary vote sitting there in November next year to get Labor out, but I don't think the Liberals can do it by themselves.
You know what? The day I'll have faith in the Liberal Party is when they put someone like Moira in charge, because I'll believe they actually want to become conservatives. I think Brad Batten's actually all right, but I don't see him standing by his principles. I think he's going to be one of those.
To those other forces.
What is that?
I think he's still beholden to those other kind of
100%. I think that they're gonna. I think his personal politics are okay, like they're decent, but he's, from what I know of him, but I think that he's just going to bend a knee to every issue just to hold on to that leadership position, which is unfortunately how that system tends to work. So that's why I say I'd only believe that the Liberal Party has changed if they allow someone like Moira to take charge, because then there's enough party room will for that direction. Because I think Brad Batten is probably he's more conservative, but he's controllable, whereas somebody like Moira Deeming has proven herself to be uncontrollable. And if you push her into a corner, she'll come out swinging even when all of you are standing there with baseball bats. And at the end of it, if you fight her hard enough and she's standing on her moral principle, she will win. And that should be a lesson for the whole Liberal Party, the whole system. Like, you guys want your little woke virtue signaling to put women up in a position. You want your quota filling? Put Moira Deeming. Why are you putting weak women? Why are you making women look bad?
I don't think.
Yeah.
I don't think the next Liberal Premier is sitting in the Parliament, and they've probably got to think outside the square and do what Campbell Newman did in Brisbane. They need to run a leader of the opposition outside of Spring Street. Spring Street's just a theatre. There's a navel-gazing theatre. Get somebody running around from town to town for the next 18 months, running an absolute muck with 5 key points of difference, and they'll romp at home. But if they continue to navel gaze and musical chairs and push anyone with talent out, they're going to continue what they've always got, which is a professional opposition.
That's what I see. I was going to say I see Labor do the Labor Party do so well with their leaders. Sometimes I don't know. We have different views of their leaders, but they actually, as wacky as their convictions are, they actually stand by them and they push them, and the whole party kind of falls and comes in behind them to support them with these wacky ideas. Whereas the Liberals, I think the leaders are so scared to have their own personal views and convictions on certain things because they want that support of everyone. It's kind of this weird thing that's going on. But I think Moira has shown, like you said, Avi, she's got the fighting spirit.
She's got the fighting spirit.
She's also politically smart as well. Now she's kind of aligned herself with Brad Batten. It's in kind of a leadership position. So she's doing all the correct things that you'd want a good politician that potentially future leadership position to be doing. So that's what we need more of. And she's really proven herself to the people of Victoria that she, whether you agree with her or not, she will fight for the things that she believes in. And a lot of the times that's what people want from their politicians.
Go on, read it.
Another super chat. Merge with the US, lower taxes and more freedom. Interesting.
Merge with
what
the
do you
US,
think,
lower
Aidan? Should we
taxes
merge
and more freedom,
with
Mark?
Should we be annexed, Aidan? Should we become a state
At
of
this
the
point,
US?
it can't get any worse than we're in now.
I think. Well, look, what's happening with Australia? If you want to talk geopolitics, it's a battle between Asia and America. You got you get a great military position, or we're a food bowl, and we're going to be owned. I think most of our land's owned by Singapore as the number one country. But we're geographically very hard to contain. We're like a Switzerland. We've got so many vested interests in here, but in doing that, we're collapsing internally, losing our identity, multinationals coming in, the middle class, eradicating. There's some serious issues that we've got here. Battle between America and Asia. But I think what we need to do in Spring Street for now is I reckon you get 2 women at the helm. You get Moira Deeming leading the upper house and Peter Credlin as the leader of the opposition on the outside, and run an absolute muck for 15 months, and I reckon that will be a close election.
Yeah, that would be very interesting.
The wild ideas. Giovanni, how you doing, Giovanni?
Go Moira, bankrupt all the wets.
I agree with you, Giovanni. Thank you so much for the super chats. Thanks for all the super chats tonight. We did say should we watch that video, or is it a bit late now that he decided to have a public fight?
Who had a public fight? Oh, we can scrap.
You guys are fighting over who's going to shout dinner next. What are you talking about? Mine was civil.
There is no fight about who's going to shout dinner. We know 100% it is Rukshan. All right, so we'll call it then. Aidan, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Where can people find you if they want to follow you? And I'll give you Troy's details as well, so you can you guys can announce your ticket running together. Let us know in the comments, guys, if you want to watch. It's a video that we said we'll watch before, the trans activists confronting the trans activists over drag story time about 2 years ago, reminiscing over that in the council. If you guys want to watch it, let us know in the comments before. But for now, we'll get Aidan just to tell us the where to find him.
Easiest way you can get me is Instagram on the handle Aidan P. McLindon. That's AIDAN P McLindon. And I will lay low for a little while, but I'm sure that I may be back in some shape or form at some point. I'm just going to recharge and get through this little battle, and we continue the fight. Thanks for having me on too, boys. It's been good.
No, we appreciate it. We appreciate it. We have a couple of three. We have a bunch of yeses.
We'll play it.
We'll play it, and we have one no.
I mean, it's relevant. It's relevant to the whole. It's
relevant to what we're talking about. Look, I can't even remember it. I remember the night. I remember it was funny. I just don't remember what really happened. Aidan, if you want to leave, you can leave, but if you want to watch it with us, you can watch it with us too.
I'll close off, man. But you have a giggle and I'll look at it on the phone. And hopefully I'll see you in a better light next time, and we'll see what the Supreme Court does.
100%, brother. Let us know. Keep us posted. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Good on you. See you.
Thanks, mate.
All right, Rukshan, it's you and me. And don't run. Oh, everybody's saying play. Don't run away now with your big super chats. Now we're gonna have to get a. Now everyone's telling us to play.
How to invest that money really quickly before I have to pay for lunch or dinner.
Bitcoin. You're gonna Bitcoin it. We'll watch it now, and I reckon we'll get a bunch of super chats because it's going to be such an entertaining video. I remember it was entertaining. I think. I don't know. We'll find out.
I mean, we can stop it here and there if we find anything funny.
What rights is it exactly you want from council that you don't have at the moment? Are there specific rights? Why are you still wearing a mask? Is it the right to have story time for children ages 1 to 6? Is that the right that's the hill you're going to die on? To have sexualised story time with little children? What are you guys fighting for? What rights in council are you lacking? Your sign says drag queens are welcome here, and that's fine, but why are they welcome to kids of ages 1 to 6? Are you a ratepayer?
Ratepayer? No, bro.
So what are you doing here?
I can tell you what I'm doing here. I'm opposing this sort of thing that is, how do I put this? Right-wing propagandists.
That was a good opener.
Avia Mini for Rebel News outside the Monash City Council, where hundreds have gathered in protest of an upcoming ratepayer-funded event.
We're here to let council know that we're not happy about drag story time and drag performers talking to kids. In this case, the story time in question is going to be conducted at Oakley Library on May 19 for kids aged 1 to 6.
And on the other side, we have a counter-protest of, I guess, pro-drag time stories to children. I'm unsure because at this stage, as they're vastly outnumbered, they're unwilling to speak up. Do you want to tell people why you're countering the protest?
Interesting, though, to note there's not one keffiyeh there. That's how you could tell it was before October 7 because it wasn't the uniform. The uniform at that time was still like the mask.
Now it's the fashion item.
Yeah.
Oh. How you doing?
Not so bad.
Not so bad?
Not so bad.
Are you here for the protest?
Absolutely.
Are you with them or with them?
Who are them?
They support the drag times, the story time.
I don't believe it.
This is?
Is there? It's okay. With me, it's okay. They have kids.
I doubt it.
Yeah.
Why do you think these guys want children 1 to 6 to be exposed to sexualized adult material?
I think they are confused people. Or they have a mentor behind the scene and with an agenda.
They can't possibly be bad people. They've got masks on. That is the international sign of a good person.
The international sign of being a good person
is wearing a mask. Excuse me, why are you just wearing one?
I remember that, and it's just like, yeah, because like now it would be if they were wearing a keffiyeh. But do you remember how like the mask, they still do wear it, but back then it was like literally a sign of I'm a decent person. And she had no idea what I'm saying because you're such an innocent, sweet old lady. What did the Forest and Freedom podcast say? You had me from the first at sentence. Is that what it says? From the first, probably the first sentence. That opening was really funny. I forgot how funny that opening was. That cold open. Thanks for the super chat, mate. Really appreciate it.
And putting us all at risk. Minimum 4 masks, thank you. I want to report a crime. They're only wearing 2 masks over there.
I've taught my kids. We don't do pronouns. You will not compel my speech. Our ancestors died for freedom. You will not.
Are they Greek from both sides?
Yes.
Are you...
No, we're Australian too, Avi.
No.
I love this country.
I wasn't questioning your
That's
law.
all right. I'm not angry at you. I'm very passionate.
Are you still married? Like, is it a?
My husband's here, around here somewhere. I brought him for protection.
Oh no, I thought you bought him just as proof that he's still alive.
No, he's alive. My husband loves strong women.
I can tell he better. Oh, he better.
Yeah.
If he knows what's good for him.
Harvey, when I was growing up, I was a tomboy. So if I was growing up in today's day and age, would I still have breasts? Would I be sent to the gender clinic?
All good, boys and ladies. Sorry, I didn't want to misgender you. That was not on purpose. Some people would argue that this is informed consent. Let the kids hear all sides of the story and let them decide at 1 to 6 whether they want to be male, female, or any of the 5,323 genders in between.
Yeah, look, I think a kid from 1 to 6 years old should just be allowed to be a kid. When you're maybe 18 years old, you can be exposed to whatever you like. You're an adult, make your own decisions.
Are you guys real cops or just identifying as cops tonight?
That the event is in fact designed for old men who wear makeup and identify as women. And the question is, why do they want to be around our children so much?
Good question.
That's right.
The council should only be worried about roads, rates and rubbish.
But some people would argue that this is rubbish.
And I would be one of those people, and so would all the other hundreds of people here as well. This is absolutely rubbish.
So you self-owned?
I self-owned myself. This is all rubbish, all of it.
How old are you? 7, so you're way too old for that story time.
What is a woman, Harvey?
Person that tells me what to do.
That's right. No politician can answer that question.
Excuse me, ma'am. You're the woman that attacked Posey Parker. How come today you're not as brave about your campaigning? Is it because you're outnumbered? I'm just going to take a second from the madness to let you know about some new merch we now have at therebelstore.com.au.
Look at that. How good
the
was
definition
that?
of a woman.
I
You
bet
can
you
wear
did
it
a good
proudly
job.
to help educate the confused people in our community. And guess what? rebelstore.com.au, you purchase it, you look good, you're proud, you're educating people, and you're supporting your favourite news network. rebelstore.com.au, get yours now.
Where are the feminists?
This is why they got rid of it. They got rid of your rights because look at you. We give you a little bit of power and you get angry.
You know what? I'm angry because I'm being asked to open up domestic violence shelters, rape shelters, toilets, women's change rooms to men, to biological men. That is wrong. It is so wrong.
Why do children need to see drag queens? Why do they need to see drag queens? But Avi, a better question is, why do these men in woman face want to have an audience with children?
Women are not safe anymore in this state, and I've had it up to here. And I'm not a Nazi, I'm not a transphobe, I'm just a normal mother, and I'm not a chest feeder or a birthing parent, and I've got 2 sons, and I'm raising them to be proper, strong men.
So the council meeting is opening now to the public. Now walking up the stairs into the council meeting with the hundreds of ratepayers who want their voices heard and some of the counter-protesters clearly identifying themselves with their masks. So the small group of protesters are here at the back of the council meeting with signs like trans people have always been here. I don't think that's the argument. Nobody here is claiming trans people have never existed. They've always been around. Everybody belongs, that's fine.
Thank you all for your questions regarding the upcoming Drag Storytime event. The Drag Storytime event is scheduled to be held on 19 May to celebrate the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia and Transphobia by modelling inclusiveness, kindness and acceptance while promoting a love of reading. This is just one of many programs that our libraries and other services run each year, many of which target specific communities. Council will continue to provide a range of events and activities across the year which support and celebrate our LGBTIQA+ community and will continue to implement its LGBTIQA+ action plan. As with all our programs, a review will be undertaken after the event. Council undertakes risk assessments for its events and works with appropriate staff and organisations to ensure the safety of those who attend any events, including the upcoming Storytime. Monash Council is committed to child safety and all events and programs are developed in line with this commitment, including the requirement for a Working with Children checks. The books being read are chosen by our qualified and experienced librarians and will celebrate diversity and acceptance and will be age appropriate. Children are never too young to receive such messages in a variety of forms. It's common that I'm trying to read out the response to the question, but could just have a bit of order, please. It's common that entertainers provide different content based upon their audience, and the entertainer will be tailoring their presentation accordingly. Attendance is by choice, and council staff and, of course, the parents of the children will be attending.
See you there.
So that concludes the public question time this evening.
A handful of the questions were read out by the councillors. The crowd not happy with the answer.
Councillor James, 2 seconds.
Just rubbish.
Sack them all! Sack them all! Sack them all! Sack them all! Sack you all! Sack you all!
Well, there you are. The crowd not very happy with your responses. Do you feel like you adequately answered your ratepayers?
Disgusting!
Are you guys happy with that one? You happy with it? Yeah?
I mean, why do you want drag show for 1 to 6 years old?
Is there a reason why the 1 to 6 year olds? Is that what you're standing for?
Can you please explain why you want drag for 1 to 6 years old, please?
Why young children? Do any of you have children? Do you guys have children? You look like you might. The rest of you.
Aren't you concerned about the kids?
But why kids? Save kids from Nazi groomers.
Yeah, like you, mate.
I'm a Nazi groomer. Do you want to expand on that?
No comment.
You just called me a Nazi. I'm a Jew.
Well, it's true.
I'm a Jew.
Yeah, and?
Jew, mate. How
So you're calling Jews Nazis
People
because...
can hate themselves, man.
What is that?
And you might understand the PSD.
is what?
So tell me, all right, so besides the fact that you think I'm a Nazi groomer because I'm questioning why it's... Mate, get your hands off me.
Never for me. Never for me.
So I get it that that's the hill you all want to die on, but why young kids? Do you have kids?
No.
No. So why do you think it's your right? Why do you
Kid here tasting clout like this. Come on, bro.
Are you from a ratepayer?
Ratepayer? No, bro.
So what are you doing here?
I can tell you what I'm doing here. I'm opposing this sort of thing that is, how do I put this?
At least he admits
right-wing propagandists.
Hang on, guys. The tolerant are acting tolerant as usual.
You guys said that you were under attack. I want to understand why you would think drag is appropriate for 1 to 6 years old, and then you guys say that he's a Nazi and that you're under attack. Why do you want this? Why do you want kids? Why do you want 1 to 6 year old exposed to drag? Please explain. I mean, aren't you concerned about the welfare of the child?
So your sign says drag queens are welcome in. That's fine, but why are they welcome to kids of ages 1 to 6? That's the question. Not whether they're welcome in life, but why do you think it's your right? Why are you fighting for that right?
Stay away from the children. Do whatever you want in your own freaking bedroom, but leave the children alone.
I heard you shouting he's a groomer. Why's that?
Because he's in favour of 1 to 6 year old kids being read books about being non-binary, about having this sexuality, that sexuality. It's not acceptable for a 1 to 6 year old kid to hear about that at all.
They're reading to our children on the 19th of May. That is disgusting.
So the meeting is over. The questions left till the end unanswered. The crowd not happy. A small group of the trans protesters now leaving. I doubt any of them are locals, certainly not ratepayers, and definitely have no children. Good night, guys and ladies. Oh, there you are.
What's happening now? I don't know.
It was actually
That was good.
entertaining.
That was good.
I forgot how much fun that was. I got to start going to some of those. Those were so much fun. I haven't done those for a while, and just the banter.
It's all relevant because we are in Pride Month now, I believe, and same type of discussions are coming up and same issues. I think like you saw there just how involved the council was in this whole affair, and it forces councillors and people who have opposing views that work in the same office or the building to oppose those ideas. You see ratepayers there that had differing views, and well, in this instance, looked like a lot of the activists weren't actually ratepayers.
They weren't. I recognise half those
They openly
guys.
said that. Exactly.
I know, it's so funny they admitted it. But yeah, it's just it kind of feels like a different time. But that was 2 years ago. Same issues are coming up again now. The only difference is now they're wrapped in like terrorist flags, which is even more crazy to me. Which will be fun, I guess, for the next one, because go to Gaza and do that. Go to Gaza and do your campaign for trans rights, or to read drag. What is it?
Drag story time for kids.
Yeah, drag story time for kids. I want to see you try pull that off in the West Bank or Gaza, or you know what, any Arab state. You know, because they always come back and go, oh well, I can't get into Gaza. Go to any Arab state and try that on. You guys are clowns. Got a super chat here from Wright. Thank you very much. What was it? For the Nazi Jew comment. I say for the Nazi Jew. Yes, you know what, that used to be so much fun back in the early days.
But they take you out of context whenever you say that. That's the thing.
Yeah, well, there was that one time on stage I said it like ironically, tongue in cheek, in reference to Antifa, who kept calling everyone Nazis. I was like, world's proudest Jews. Anyways, they moved on from that. And nowadays, I'm just the wife basher, because they care about women so much. They love my ex-wife so much. They care so much about women.
I should read your book, Rebel from the Start.
Rebelfromthestart.com. There you go. But back then, they used to call me, like back before all that, before they had that one, they would call me a Nazi, and then I would laugh at it. So that was before I knew you even. I would love going to those protests, put the kipper on my head, have them screaming, and it was like every single time they just, without fail, gave me that content, gave me that money shot, which was just hilarious to anyone who watched it. They don't realize how ridiculous they are. That's why when they got the woman basher one for them, they were just like, it was the jackpot, because it's just like, oh my God, now I've got to tell you to read my book.
Yeah.
They didn't like though.
Well, I mean, I noticed in the comments, there's always people coming in and writing those type of comments, and I'm like, Avi talks about all this in his book. Just go read the book.
Go read it. And I talk about it like there was a period. There was a period when I couldn't talk about it. That was the most painful, because I just had to cop it, and I wasn't even, because legally I wouldn't, like, I had to do my best to cut out even somebody saying it. Now when they do it at protests, I use it as an opportunity to stand in front of it and sell my book. They hate it. Rebelfromthestart.com. Get my book, read it, let me know what you think. The reviews are actually pretty decent. Besides for the first probably 10 before the books were actually getting sent out, they started sharing, like, and I was getting like heaps of reviews. They were all 1 star. This book's crap. I'm like, dude, you didn't get it because I'm literally the first one.
I admit I left one of those 1-star reviews. Yeah, for sure.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Rukshan. Actually, why am I thanking you? You got paid well today.
Mate.
Till Monday, eh? I reckon we'll get the comments hopefully set up for Monday.
Tuesday night.
Tuesday night.
All up.
Guys, give us ideas also who you want to see on the show with us. You can
actually, that's a good idea. Actually, suggest to people even to come on the show, because we would love to have people that have differing political opinions as well. You know, people that don't necessarily like.
I would love some of those trans
activists. Come on, speak to us, tell us your views, and that'd be great. So suggest to people as well to contact us to get on the opposition podcast.
They can contact avi@rebelnews.com, because Rukshan does absolutely nothing. He logs in and gets paid. On that note, God bless.
Thanks, guys.
You all.
See you next time.